Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 41, Vera versus Cruz, also known as UFC San Diego. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com, and with me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Right now, as of when we're recording this, UFC Vegas 59 has not yet happened. So I don't know whether this San Diego card is going to, it's going to need to help us recover from a terrible card, or it's going to have a great card to live up to. But frankly, on paper, this is one of the thinner fight night cards of the year so far, in my opinion. What do you think about this one?
Well, I was thinking this. We've been doing the show for a long time, and you're one of the top dogs over at Sherdog. Why didn't you talk to the bosses and had us do this show live in San Diego? We need to go on the road. We need to go on the road, brother. And that would have been a good spot.
It absolutely would have. Like, if you're going to send me anywhere, don't send me to, the WinStar in Thackerville, as we were talking about, or the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls. Send us to San Diego.
When's the best time to visit San Diego? I mean, because August is nice here. August is nice everywhere. But is it good to go in April, March?
Yeah, my brother and my father-in-law both live in San Diego. It is nice in January. It's nice in July. It's nice all the time in San Diego.
All right, so we're going to make this happen. We're going to tell the bosses if they have a return show in San Diego in a cold month, the Shill and Duffy show is hitting the road.
Absolutely.
As far as the card, it's okay. I'll say this. I'd give it a C. And I agree with you saying that it's thin, especially in the ranking sense. But Dominic Cruz is going to be on media day. He's going to talk a lot of shit, and he's going to get us excited. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah. And he's in his de facto hometown. I know he's from Arizona, but he's lived and trained out of San Diego forever.
Yeah, he's from San Diego. So that's a good fight. I think I'm looking at the card, and again, there's not a lot of fights that'll be matter to the rankings, but there's a lot of action fights, like Landwehr versus Onama. That's an action fight. Mm-hmm. Gerald Meerschaert is always going to bring it against Bruno Silva. Angela Hill versus our buddy Lupita Godinez. That's a fun action fight. There's a couple. I think the flyweight fight, Tyson Nam and Ode Osbourne. That's a fun action fight. So I like that. There's a couple of people making their debuts that I think will be fun. So,
and I mean, one of those came up pretty much last minute. We're talking about Blackshear getting called up from CFFC. We'll be talking about that fight in about half an hour here. But honestly, I'm more interested in the fight now than when it was Christian Quinones versus Youssef Zalal.
Really?
Yeah.
I think Quinones is pretty. I
think he's pretty good as well. But here we've got so many unknowns. We got Zalal dropping to 135. We got Blackshear coming in out of nowhere. If I'm looking to learn something new, I'm looking for surprise. I think that fight's going to deliver it.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless you got anything else, want to jump right into these?
No, yeah, let's get it.
This is Ben with a quick note that after Keith and I recorded the preview for UFC on ESPN 41, it took on some refugees in the form of two fights that were pushed at the last minute from last Saturday's UFC Vegas 59 card to this weekend in San Diego. They are the Josh Quinlan versus Jason Witt welterweight bout, which was postponed when Quinlan tested positive for trace amounts of a banned performance enhancer, and the Ariane Lipski versus Priscila Cachoeira flyweight fight, which was postponed when Lipski missed weight by 4 pounds on Friday. They are now being contested at a 175-pound catchweight and at bantamweight, respectively. So while I'm reposting the preview segments from last week intact, since nothing has really changed materially in terms of our predictions, any references to the weight class are definitely inaccurate, and any references to the betting lines may be obsolete as well. All right. First one out of the gate at UFC San Diego is the aforementioned flyweight matchup between Ode Osbourne and Tyson Nam. Osbourne, the 30-year-old Jamaican-American from Wisconsin, is 11-4 with one no contest overall. He is 3-2 in the UFC since joining out of the third season of Dana White's Contender Series. It's worth noting that he is 2-0 at flyweight. He had his first couple fights in the UFC at bantamweight. He then went to drop to flyweight, got matched up against Manel Kape, who blew weight really badly. I mean, they met at like 130 pounds or something. But since then, in his two actual fights at flyweight, he has won them both. Those are CJ Vergara and Zaruk Adashev. The most recent of those, the Adashev fight, he knocked him out in like a minute at UFC Fight Night Volkov versus Rosenstrike back in June. He'll be taking on Nam. The 38-year-old veteran is 20-12-1 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 2-3 in the UFC. He lost his last time out. It was a razor close split decision against Matt Schnell last January at UFC on ESPN, Chiesa versus Magny. Prior to that, he had won 2 in a row over Adashev and Jerome Rivera. Odds here favor Osbourne pretty heavily, as you might expect. Osbourne is minus 220 or so right now. Nam available around plus 180 on the comeback. Keith, I'm going to toss this to you first, but one thing I'll say about Ode Osbourne is he did not initially present to me as a guy that looked like a good candidate for dropping to 125. He was not small at bantamweight, and his problems in his first couple fights at bantamweight really didn't seem to be related to size. So to me, it didn't make any sense, and I didn't think it would particularly help him. If you told me that one guy in the Kape fight was going to blow weight, I would have guessed it would be just as likely to be Osbourne, but it's worked out well for him so far. Yeah. Does he make it 3 straight here against Nam?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the guy you'd want to face at this point in your career. I mean, we talk about Tyson Nam. Like he's fun. Like Tyson Nam's a fun fighter, but he's 38 at flyweight. Like that's something that, very few fighters can sustain. One, just make the weight at 125 at that age, but also be a high level. Now, Nam, he's a counter striker, more of a boxer. He's a bit of your like hold your ground kind of counter striker where he wants to try to beat you at the point of attack and land some power shots. Though we've seen him at times be a little trigger shy. And it is not the weight class where you really want to be a low output guy in a weight class that is mostly known. Look at Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France. The amount of output these guys can do. He looks for the KO in every strike he throws, and he has the power though. He has 12 knockouts in his career, but he can be a little predictable as he's very right hand happy. He kind of like slugs this, overhand right over and over again. I do like when he kind of returns with like a left hook to the body, but he doesn't check leg kicks. He's not much of a wrestler. When he does go for a takedown, there are upper body takedowns. If he gets on top, pretty good ground control. He's pretty technical. We saw him against Jerome Rivera where he did land some good ground and pound. But this guy's fought, I think, 33, 34, 35 times or something like that. Like he's one of the most experienced guys. He's got 1 submission, so he's not a big threat there. Now, Ode Osbourne, this guy's it's all potential with this guy. He has some raw skills. He's a southpaw that's very aggressive on his feet, but it's a controlled aggression where he kind of he's not winging defense. He's just kind of pressing the action, but also picking his shots as he does it. He's fast. He's accurate. He's explosive. I like that he attacks with combinations. He hits really, really hard. He has the length to kind of keep the distance. If he's fighting from the outside, I like that he used that lead check hook to kind of keep his distance. He'll throw some spinning attacks, more for show than anything, but some really, really good hard calf kicks. But he kind of plants himself, so he leaves himself open to a counter if that's something you have to worry about. He does move some, so like he plants when he's throwing, but he moves a little bit, and he relies a lot on head movement, which I like. But he pulls his head straight back, and that's actually what's got him knocked out by Kape, kind of staying on that center line. But he showed in his last fight, and I think this will go a long way at flyweight because you really need to be well-rounded. He showed in his last fight. He took down CJ Vergara, which was a smart move. He doesn't shoot enough, but it's hopefully something he'll start going to. When he's on top, he's got good ground and pound. He's got 4 submission wins. I don't like that he drops down for ankle locks, but that's like the only thing about this guy I don't like. He's got so much potential. I think there's a reason why he's a big favorite. I like Ode Osbourne here. I think he's better than Nam everywhere. I think he's way too fast on the feet. I think he hits too hard. He can wrestle a little bit, and I think he actually might even have the advantage wrestling. Nam has faced some really power punches in his career and hasn't been stopped. So I don't think Osbourne is the guy that kind of to put him out. I think he'll survive like the Osbourne onslaught. But give me Osbourne an absolute blowout decision win.
I couldn't have said any of that better. That Tyson Nam has that many fights and is 38 is definitely concerning for all the reasons you mentioned. I mean, 38 at flyweight is basically like 62 at heavyweight. So he's basically like the Czech Congo of the flyweight division. And you're right. Like, I think he's kind of tailor-made to make Ode Osbourne look great. Just his style is, I think it's going to let Osbourne kind of tee off on him on the feet. You know, Osbourne's probably going to get in, like, if he wants to, he's going to get in several licks while Nam tries to load him up for like one huge, like, right hand counter. But Nam has just stayed incredibly tough. He's fought some hard hitting guys like Kai Kara-France, Zhalga Zhumagulov, Matt Schnell, like big flyweights that hit hard.
Yeah, Snell's been on a roll with that.
Yeah, and Nam's like stood up to everything they could dish out. So unless Osbourne just lines him up for some like perfect like spinning hook kick to the temple or something like that, I don't see a finish here either. Yeah. But give me Ode Osbourne by a pretty lopsided decision as well.
The funny thing, we neither one of us picked him to win by knockout, but he is that guy that could do it.
Yeah,
he could be the guy to finally put out Nam.
And again, it wouldn't surprise me. And if he does, it'll be probably something that's on your of the year type lists. Mm-hmm. But, you know, given as much punishment as Nam seems to be able to take, I'm not picking it.
Let me ask you this. Are you surprised that this is open in the card? Surprised not higher up?
Kind of, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do some shuffling with a couple of these real new arrivals that don't have a whole lot of hype behind them. We're going to talk about Damon Blackshear next. We're going to talk about Yazmin Lucindo in a little while. You know, just some real kind of out of nowhere debutantes. But yeah, I am surprised that right now it's the opener. Next up at UFC San Diego, at least as the card is constituted as of about a week out from fight night, is a bantamweight matchup between Youssef Zalal and the debuting Damon Blackshear. Zalal, the 25-year-old Moroccan-born Colorado native, is 10-5 overall. He is an even 3-3 in the UFC, and it is a baseball record. He is 3 up, 3 down. He debuted in the UFC right before the COVID shutdown. It was February of 2020, and that was the first of 3 straight wins for him. He beat Austin Lingo, Jordan Griffin, and Peter Barrett. All 3 of them, you know, kind of showed off his flashy style. He became a little bit of a sensation. He was one of the first guys to sort of pop out as a rising star during the whole COVID thing. But after those first 3 wins, it has turned rough for him, kind of when he moved up to the next level of competition. He has lost 3 straight since then. In fairness to him, they were against Ilia Topuria, Sung Woo Choi, and Sean Woodson. The most recent of those, the Woodson fight, was just over a year ago. It was at UFC Fight Night, Rosenstrike versus Sakai last June. In trying to get things back on track, he is dropping from 145 to 135 pounds. He was scheduled to face Christian Quinones. Quinones out of the fight due to visa issues. In comes reigning Cage Fury Fighting Championships bantamweight champ Damon Blackshear on short notice. Blackshear, the 27-year-old North Carolina native, is 12-4 overall. This will, of course, be his debut, but he is on, I think, a 3 or 4 fight winning streak that saw him win and then defend that CFFC bantamweight championship. This fight is new enough that as of right now, there are no odds available yet. So we'll see what happens, but I expect that Zalal will probably open as just a slight favorite here, given Blackshear being such a relative unknown and coming in on relatively short notice. Damon Blackshear, I wouldn't say he's a great prospect, but he's an interesting prospect. And as a champ in one of the UFC's, one of their 5 or 6 major feeder leagues in the States, he's someone that probably would have shown up on the Contender Series like this fall or next spring.
Little surprised he hasn't been on it like last year.
It is kind of surprising because he's not a perfect fighter. I mean, 12-4 exactly says it, and I'm going to get to some of his losses, which are not pretty. But when he's on, he is on. He has a highlight reel that would draw the attention of a next level promotion. he is a big dude. I mean, he's fought at 145 as well as 135. At 135, he dwarfs most of his opponents. He's 5'9" or 5'10", not particularly skinny. He is a wild, rangy striker. Lots of stuff comes kind of, lots of his punches, both hands just kind of come looping from outside, but he's long enough. It has enough reach on most of his opponents that his stuff does land. He hits with power, but the real fun happens when he brings things to the ground. He's much more of a funky scramble type grappler than just a straight, bowling ball, double leg through the hips type guy. But I have seen him just pull off some wild stuff. In the fight where he won the CFFC championship over DeAndre Anderson, he did kind of a wizard to hop over the back take that looked like a cross between Dustin Hazlett's crazy armbar on Josh Berkman, like a cross between that and something like Dave Camarillo would do at a clinic just to like amuse himself and amuse other people. So Blackshear, when he's on, you get kind of wild stuff on the feet, really exciting stuff on the ground. I mean, 2/3 of his wins so far are by submission, but he's got a lot of gimmicks and there's not a whole lot of glue holding it together. He is lost to less skilled fighters and certainly less physically gifted fighters who just have a more bread and butter game. Like he lost to Chris Moutinho, and Chris Moutinho beat him just by standing in the pocket with him and outboxing him. Like he was twice Moutinho's size. He's way stronger. He's faster. He's better at just about everything. And even though Moutinho got knocked down in the first round, he won the fight just by just standing toe-to-toe with him and striking with him. And Blackshear just didn't really have any answers. The loss to Pat Sabatini has aged pretty well in hindsight, but that's still kind of the Achilles heel of Damon Blackshear. Like, he's got a ton of sizzle. He's got a huge bag of tricks, but just it doesn't always come together in like a coherent performance. He's been good enough that was good enough to get him titles on the regional scene. We'll have to see how well it translates at a UFC level, but at age 27, he's got plenty of time to keep kind of pulling these things together. I mean, when John Jones came to the UFC, he was this bag of crazy tricks and didn't have a whole lot of glue holding him together. And look at him now. As debut opponents go at 135 or 145, Youssef Zalal Youssef Zalal is not too unfriendly a matchup here, because at 145, Zalal was kind of a flashy, high output but low power striker who turned out to be very susceptible to his opponent's wrestling. That's kind of tailor-made for Blackshear to either look good against or not be punished too badly against, because Zalal does not have the power to really punish him for his mistakes. And given Zalal's kind of demonstrated deficiencies in the ground game, I mean, granted, Blackshear is not Ilia Topuria from a standpoint of pure physical horsepower, but this thing will probably go to the ground at some point. And if it does, Blackshear is probably going to have some fun with Zalal. I'm making this pick in the presence of a ton of unknowns, like Blackshear stepping up on short notice. He, again, is a newcomer to the UFC. This is Zalal's first fight in over a year, and it's at a new weight class. But I don't know what the odds are going to look like, but I'm kind of leaning towards Blackshear here. I think this is kind of a good setup for him to come in, make a fantastic first impression. I'm not going to call for the finish. I mean, if a murderer's row of Ilia Topuria, Sung Woo Choi, and Sean Woodson, couldn't get Youssef Zalal out there, I'm not picking it to start happening now. But give me Blackshear to win 2 out of 3 rounds and probably show us some stuff that'll make us really excited to see him next time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to go with Blackshear after you just called him the next John Jones. I don't know if anybody caught that. Well, he did get compared to Bones Jones, which in fairness to Blackshear never lost to Matt Hamill. So, I mean,
there you go.
He's got guys who's fighting. The guys he lost to are in the UFC. So, Chris. Well, actually, I think Martino got cut, but. Yeah, so I'm not even gonna fake it, guys. I found out about this fight 5 minutes before we started taping. So, yeah, I was taking Zalal to be Christian Quinones, even though I thought it was going to be a fun fight. I'm kind of winging Blackshear off of memory. I, as you mentioned, he is a big guy. I'm wondering if the weight cut on short notice, like I'm wondering if he'll make weight. And actually, I'm wondering if both guys will make weight, considering Zalal is moving down. And then you look, and I'm like, oh, why was this, Zalal moving down? I never thought he was like a smaller guy. And I'm like, oh wait, he fought Sean Woodson in his last fight.
Oh, dude, all three, like Topuria is like this tank, and then Sung Woo is that he's got that like Korean fighter build where he looks like 8 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and then he turns sideways and he's like a playing card. He just disappears. He's like 2-dimensional. Yeah. And then Sean Woodson, who's like the biggest dude on the planet. It's ridiculous.
Like Shaquille O'Neal size or something. Like,
yeah,
that'll make you want to drop down when you just look up at Sean Woodson. Blackshear, off of memory, I've seen him fight a couple of times in person. He fights a lot in the upper northeast region. I saw him when he fought Cody Norby in CES. I saw him fight Mike Kimball at Bellator. I was in attendance for both of those. As you mentioned, fighting in really good feeder systems, so that's something you like. Only 27, you like that. He's kind of in those prime years. He's very athletic. He's got some fast hands, but he wings. He's kind of wild on the feet. He throws a lot of wings. Like, he's kind of like very chaotic. Like, he's moving around so much. I like his kicks. Some deep kicks up the middle. Throw some spinning attacks. I like how you described his grappling. Like, he's not a wrestler, but he's pretty good at winning scrambles. He's good at like a funk style wrestler. He's got some pretty strong takedown defense, and he is a submission threat, as you mentioned. I know the 2 fights I saw him in attendance, he got submissions in both those. I think he's been on a pretty good streak of submissions recently. But, yeah, taking a fight on, I don't know, less than 2 weeks' notice, week and a half notice, that's always tough. Now, Zalal, the thing that jumps out to me about him, this dude's 25. Like, a lot of people, like, kind of, he's on this 3-fight losing streak. People writing him off, and I'm like, oh, wait. Dude's 25. Like, if we took away those last 3 losses, who against, again, 3 good guys. I mean, especially Topuria. Take away those 3 losses and stick him on the Contender Series right now, we'd probably be saying he's one of the best fighters on Contender Series. He'd be the guy we'd be really excited about. So, I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass facing some really tough competition, but now is the time. If he loses to like a Blackshear, who, again, I agree with you, is a pretty good addition to the UFC, but then we'll just know that, okay, if he loses to Blackshear, Zalal is just another guy. The things I like about him, he's long and lengthy, and he becomes even more lengthy now fighting that bantamweight. Not against Blackshear. Again, that's not the perfect example, but most bantamweights. He's an athletic fighter. He's pretty elusive. I say he's a serviceable boxer. I like that he goes to the body, like he's smart with that. I like that he works step in knees. A lot of his like secondary things besides his hands on his feet are really good. Step in knees, good leg kicks. He throws a fast high kick. I'm much higher on his wrestling than you are. I think he's an underrated offensive wrestler. I agree with you, a weak defensive wrestler, but again, I think that might be a little bit of Topuria because when you like look at his stats, and you know me, I don't like to look at the stats. It's not something. I don't think it always tells the full story, but I mean, he got 3 takedowns against Peter Barrett, 3 takedowns against Sung Hoo Choi, 2 takedowns against Sean Woodson. Again, Peter Barrett, not a good wrestler. Sean Woodson, not a good wrestler. Oh, Sean Woodson's hard to take down because he's got like that. When you lift up in a single leg and he's still on his feet, like he has that thing going for him. But like, so he's got like that tall man defense. But I think Sung Hoo Choi, like he's not a wrestler, but he's a really good fighter to get takedowns against him. So I like that. So I think he's a better offense wrestler, and I can't ignore that he got taken down twice by Sung Hoo Choi. Going all the way back, he got taken by Jordan Griffin, got taken down against Austin Lingo once, but he also took Austin Lingo down 6 times in that fight. So I like his offensive wrestling a little bit better. I think his defense wrestling might be a little bit better. He's going to be challenged. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of scrambles on the feet, on the ground. Zalal I think he's a submission threat. He can be a little too aggressive looking to secure a submission though. And if he's put on his back, he'll toss up submissions off his back. But I'll give him this. He's incredibly hard to submit. Topuria had him in some deep submissions, and he found ways out. And in fairness, yeah, he got dominated Topuria, but he had really good cardio. He actually was coming on pretty late against Topuria and was like showing some good signs. So really a cop out. I'm going to take Zalal simply because one, I knew he was fighting tonight. It's not often where Blackshear will be the smaller fighter. I think Zalal will be a little bit bigger than him. I think he's the better wrestler. He's not the one taking the fight on short notice. And I actually would feel much better about Blackshear if this was a fight in like CLCF. If Zalal got cut and he went into CLF, like CLCF, he's a guy that could challenge for the title right away. And you don't have those jitters of your first time UFC, as in you're defending your title. It's a 5-round fight. Like, I think there's some things, the outside factors that are kind of leaning towards Zalal. So I'll take Zalal and a really close, no confidence in this pick decision. Hey, you never gave you a grade. Like, I think I said my grade. I don't think you gave you a grade. I know you were bashing it a little bit, but I just realized.
Yeah, I was thinking like a C-.
Okay. So yeah, we're pretty close to the same range.
Yeah. We head now to the lightweight division for a matchup between two gentlemen who are reaching that division from opposite directions. It is former featherweight Gabriel Benitez and former welterweight Charlie Ontiveros, two men who have another thing in common. Both are badly in need of a win. Benitez, the 34-year-old Mexican, is 22-10 overall. He is an even 6-6 in the UFC, but he has lost 4 of his last 5. Across those 5 fights, 3. Let me back up for a sec. He is an even 6-6 in the UFC, but that is slightly deceptive as he has lost 4 of his last 5 fights, 3 of those 4 losses by knockout. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, both knockouts. The first against Billy Quarantillo last July, then most recently met David Onama this February at UFC Fight Night Walker versus Hill at a catchweight because Benitez missed the featherweight limit. Then to make things even worse, got knocked out late in the first round. He is moving up to 155 at perhaps the urging of his bosses, maybe to try to turn things around here, and he will be facing Ontiveros. The 31-year-old Houston native is 11-8 overall. He is 0-2 in the UFC. He made a short notice debut against Kevin Holland, got slammed into a TKO submission, something snapped, something hurt halfway through the first round. That was back in October 2020 at UFC Fight Night, Hall versus Silva, the UFC Halloween card. He came back a year later, last October, got knocked out in the second round by Steve Garcia. This will be him hoping third time is the charm. He is not favored to get it done. Benitez, one of the bigger favorites on the card. He is minus 360. Ontiveros plus 280 as the underdog. I'll say this. I mean, anyone who's familiar with the show, and certainly you who have been doing these shows with me for a couple of years now, you know how I am about Houston fighters. It's hard for me to pick against them, especially if I know them, if I know their coaches. I don't know Charlie Ontiveros that well. Certainly I know him. He'd recognize me if he saw me in the street. I've been to his gym several times. You know, I know his coach, Jeremy Mahan, at War Training Center pretty well. He is one of Trevin Giles' primary sparring partners. The jury is out on whether Charlie Ontiveros is UFC material or a guy who just, you know, got lucky, right place, right time. But if there is someone that he can get a UFC win to write home about and say, hey, I made it to the top promotion and I got a win, this was my Rudy moment, it's Gabriel Benitez. Like, well, I'm just
Rudy
Benitez,
the Charlie Ontiveros, Charlie.
I mean, Benitez has not looked great of late. Like I said off the top, he's lost 4 of his last 5. He missed weight his last time out. His one win in that entire time is over Justin James, who really was kind of like the Rudy of the UFC. Just this like undersized, unathletic dude that got like his one great shining moment. Like
that might be Mike Jackson.
Another acquaintance of mine. What is it with? And the thing is, Benitez, even though he's just 34, he's showing all the first encroaching signs of a shot fighter. Like, his gas tank is not what it was. His chin has seemed really susceptible recently. I mean, getting spiked by David Onama is no shame, but he used to be this like athletic, powerful, pretty high motor featherweight, and that seems to be going away. And he's moving up to lightweight here, and he's taking on someone in Ontiveros who is an absolutely titanic lightweight. I mean, he's kind of tall and skinny, but for 155, he's a big dude. On the local scene, he is a highlight machine. I have been 10 feet away when he has scored several of the nastiest finishes I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. Like, when you get him in front of someone that apparently just isn't quite UFC level, he is terrifying. But against next level opponents, either, he's just been bullied and out wrestled. I mean, like Kevin Holland, who is kind of a skinny guy himself, like slammed him through the octagon floor. He lost to people like Michael Venom Page and Jeff Neal, on local shows here. But Gabriel Benitez doesn't necessarily offer any of those threats. I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around Benitez being an almost 4-1 favorite here. Like, I understand that he should be a favorite, but if I were a betting person, I would be all over this. And as it is, yeah, I'm a homer. You guys know how I am with Houston fighters and Texas fighters, but impartially, I might be leaning towards Ontiveros anyway.
All right. All right.
So give me Benitez in a fight where he probably has to hang on to win by decision, because Ontiveros has him in like a ton of trouble early on. But it wouldn't surprise me if Ontiveros has hit like a flying knee or like a spinning wheel kick on him or something, like as Benitez gets tired and dinged up later in this fight.
Yeah, and has like the Disney music playing in the background when he gets his UFC win. And Trevin Giles picks him off. They carry off the field, and the credits roll. Who's his coach?
Jeremy Mahan. He was one of the founders of 4 Ounce Fight Club, and he founded War Training Center. Yeah.
All right. I want to see his coach like grab Charlie and say, like, "Are you waiting for this moment?" And, are you ready for this moment? I've been ready my whole life.
It would be great if Trevin and Jeremy were the ones that carried him off, because Trevin's about 10 inches taller. So like Charlie be like kind of leaning out to one side.
Yeah, I screwed up that Rudy like line. I don't know what's a famous line of Rudy. I've been waiting my whole life or something like that.
I don't remember the line, but
hand up. Wait, where's that Rock? Remember the Rock guy? The original Rock guy, the guy that was like, he was the groundskeeper, but he was former player for Notre Dame, and he wasn't getting played because of his skin color.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's got to be as Charlie's making the entrance. That guy just standing there like this, smiling at him.
Charlie's dad will be in the stands, like never believed he was really in the UFC.
Right. His asshole brothers who was taunting him. You got the one asshole brother, then you have the other brother who was banging his girlfriend while he went away to college. What a gem Rudy was.
Yeah.
I think Joe Montana just ruins the whole movie by saying that it was they like pranking Rudy when they carried him off the field. You hear that one? There's like the whole it's like a whole So like this, Trevin Giles just ruins the whole movie for everybody. The Charlie Ontiveros. Charlie Ontiveros is like 6 inches taller than Gabriel Benitez. He used to fight at middleweight. Gabriel Benitez used to fight at featherweight, and they're fighting each other now. Like, I'm with you. Like Gabriel Benitez being a 4-1 favorite, moving up a weight class against a giant.
Like, if Gabriel Benitez got cut and went and fought, and he was fighting in Combate Americas or Combate Global this weekend, he shouldn't be a 4-1 favorite over that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I could see him being a 4-1 favorite fighting on like the Bellator prelims against a local guy, maybe.
Yeah.
But is there a lot of people making bets on Gabriel Benitez that make him a 4-1 favorite? Is there like a big Gabriel Benitez fan club I don't know about?
I'm guessing it's just lack of faith in Ontiveros, because if all you've seen of him is him getting posterized twice in the UFC, once by a not very good fighter. I mean, Steve Garcia is not that good, and he beat Ontiveros bad. Like, I can see why.
Do you think Ontiveros coach has ever turned to Trevin Giles and said, if you had half the heart as Charlie, you did it all state?
I strongly doubt that.
I've seen Rudy way too many times. It's a true story. I was driving across real quick. Story time with Keith. Everyone liked my gargoyle story, so I'll tell you another one. I was driving across, and I'm in Indiana, and we're going to Wisconsin. We're going to the Wisconsin Dells. We made it I'd never been to the Midwest, so I did like a whole Midwest thing. We stopped in Cleveland and Chicago and, different things. So we get to Indiana, and it's gets some tough driving. A lot of just cornfield. It's Midwest. I get it. And I see the sign for South Bend, Indiana. But you think these signs you think it's like, oh, okay, take this highway and 150 miles that way, you're going to get to Notre Dame. Well, no, I'm just saying it's like Notre Dame, 1 mile. And I'm like, how the hell is Notre Dame? Like, this is just cornfield and cornfield. Finally, I'm like, I don't tell my wife because, she wanted to get there. I'm like, dude, I'm not driving by Notre Dame without stopping. So we pull over. And then as soon as you take the exit, it's, holy shit, there's Notre Dame. It's like, where the hell this just pops out of nowhere? It's amazing. So if you've never been there, it's pretty cool. But we snuck on the campus because it was during COVID times, so they were closed down the campus. You couldn't go on. And we parked off and we walked in. My kids were super scared, thinking we were gonna get arrested. It was middle of the summer, so no one was on campus. But we found one student who took a picture and had that gold bowl behind him. Mm-hmm. So that's my Notre Dame story. That I got to me and Rudy get to make it. Me, Rudy, and Charlie Ontiveros made it to Notre Dame. That's not as good as my gargoyle story, but
Charlie Ontiveros.
I'd rather talk about cheer. That'd be great. Let's make this happen. Everyone tweet at Charlie Ontiveros and get him to come out to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish song. I'll tell you right now, I will bet on Charlie Ontiveros. I'll change my pick. I'm taking Benitez, obviously. I will change my pick to Ontiveros if our listeners can be like, Charlie, come on to the Rudy theme, or not the Rudy, the cheer for old Notre Dame. He'll be my favorite fight of all time. I'll never put him on the cut list ever if he does that. Anyways, that said, yeah, when you're you're on a losing streak, you're moving up in weight, and you're giving up 6 inches, you probably shouldn't be a 4-1 favorite. I thought this fight would be a pick'em. Mm-hmm. So Benitez is sound. I agree with you about the athleticism. I think the athleticism is really kind of diminished. So now we just kind of have to be a technically sound striker. He's a southpaw. He's a kickboxer. Really a stick and move style, which is going to be really hard getting in and out against the range of Ontiveros. He works behind a jab. He follows up with some big shots. His left hand is kind of his best blow. I like that he works to the body, and that's really what he should do against Ontiveros. Get inside, try to get those body. I'd say plus power. I'm hoping the power goes with him to lightweight. We've seen that when guys move up. Tons of kicks. Some of the best kicks, I was going to say in the division. Now he's in the division, but some of the best kicks in the UFC. Calf kicks, some hard kicks to the body. He hardly ever wrestles. I don't expect him to wrestle in this fight. Last time he got a takedown was against Humberto Bontanay back in 2018. So I don't think he'll go for takedown, but when he actually has wrestled, he's been okay. But he never really uses it. I got to worry about his chin, though. I mean, David Onama knocked him out cold. Ontiveros, again, a bigger guy, massive light heavyweight. He's pretty athletic. He moves on his feet pretty well. He has very karate bladed style. Mm-hmm. He keeps his hands not even down, but almost to his side, which I don't like. He loves his check hook. He loves his wild kicks. The guy threw an axe kick against Kevin Holland. So he is what you're saying. He's an exciting guy. He wants to work for space. He hates being pressured. He's got a really weak takedown defense, though. He was taken down 3 times by Steve Garcia, who is not Bo Nickel. He really struggled to get back up. I am worried about his cardio due to the weight cut. He's a big guy, probably should be a welterweight. And he's also been knocked out a lot. Ontiveros is really big compared to Benitez. If Benitez still has his chin, though, I think he can kind of pick up Ontiveros. I think he's a little faster. I think he has more weapons. I actually think he might even hit harder. I see Benitez just going after those big, large legs, causing him to limp around, land some good power shots. I almost took a knockout for him, but at this point in his career, I don't think he gets a knockout. I say he wins a decision. Give me Benitez to ruin Rudy number 2.
There you go. 2 picks for Gabriel Mowgli Benitez with one hell of a side trip through South Bend, Indiana in between.
That's it. If the UFC ever does like a campus show on Notre Dame, Ontiveros headlining that card.
We head now to the heavyweight division for a matchup between 2 veterans of the same season of Dana White's Contender Series. It is Martin Buday versus Lukasz Brzeski. Buday, the 30-year-old Slovakian, is 10-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. He won on the Contender Series last October, debuted in April against Chris Barnett, and put an end to the fun, winning a technical decision in the 3rd round over the man they call Huggy Bear. He's going to try to make it 2 straight against the debuting Brzeski. Brzeski, 30-year-old from Poland, is 8-1-1 with 1 no contest overall. This will be his UFC debut, and that 1 no contest is his Contender Series appearance. He was on the Contender Series last September, absolutely thrashed Dylan Potter with a brutal 3rd round knockout. That was overturned shortly thereafter when he tested positive for banned performance enhancer clomiphene. And if you are watching this on video and you can see his Fight Finder profile photo directly beneath my face, you will not be at all surprised that he popped for a steroid. He served served a suspension, had that overturned, and he is now making his debut. He is not favored, however. Buday minus 225 as the favorite. Brzeski plus 180 on the comeback. Keith, Lukasz Brzeski, I mean, physically, obviously, he has the look of a next level athlete. He's got plenty of upside. He's only 30 years old, but that performance on the Contender Series, it was weird anyway, because it was this technical submission, or the submission where like Potter didn't really tap. They stopped the fight anyway. And I mean, granted, they were a minute and 10 seconds away from him winning a pretty one-sided decision anyway. Yeah. I mean, he was trashing Potter, but all in all, kind of a weird bumpy road to get to the UFC, but I understand why Buday is the favorite here. For as much as Brzeski like looks like He-Man, like Buday is an absolutely titanic human being and moves pretty decently for a 6'5" guy that clearly has to cut weight to make the heavyweight limit.
Huge.
And he absolutely bullied Chris Barnett. He didn't let any of the fun happen. We wanted to see more wheel kicks. Yeah. We wanted to, see more of him snatching the mic and ruining John Volante's week. And Buday was like, nope, I'm just going to clinch with you. I'm going to squash you. Like, I'm going to kind of ragdoll you and throw you around and just kind of make you look like a little short, fat guy, and not let you do any of your stuff. Does he get that same kind of thing done here against Brzeski? How do you see this fight playing out?
Oh, man. Can we go back to talking about Disney movies instead of this one? Like this should be the first fight of the night. Buday, he is. You said it, he's like this massive. He's got to cut weight. I mean, if he's a Disney character, he's like Goldberg the goalie or something like that. Like he's not very athletic. Just a lumbering. Speaking of which, did you ever watch the Mighty Ducks? For a second, all right, here's another side rant. You watch the Mighty Ducks, like the Mighty Ducks 2, when they have the girl goalie who's like really good, and at the end, Coach Bombay, like the worst coach of all time, puts her in that and like, hey, you haven't played all season. Oh, hardest time. Let's go in. Like, wait, you're saying she's better than Goldberg? Why didn't you play the whole freaking season if she's better than Goldberg? Why'd you put the fat kid in there? Anyways, that's my me having an issue from a movie that came out 30 years ago. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen that movie. Back to Buday. I don't know what the hell I was saying about him. What else about this? He throws straight punches down the pipe. He just he loses power for a big guy because he kind of pulls his head back and he pulls his punches, kind of keeps his chin high in the air. But he follows his punches in because he just wants to grind. He wants to get in the clinch. He wants to close the distance. He wants to grind on you. He did it against Barnett. He gets in those close quarter, and he's pretty good striker in close corner. I mean, he beat the hell out of Barnett with just knees to the body, hurt him with a knee to the body, and he's not fun, but he's very effective. Now, I'm going to mess up his name, but Lukasz is everything that Buday isn't. He's a good athlete. He's good output, fast hands. He really whips his shots, a lot of kicks, front kicks, but he does make the mistake of throwing naked leg kicks, I don't like. He does stand up a little tall, has a little bit of a big target. His chin is a massive target. Now, yeah, the Shirt Oak Fight Finder is going to show him ripped up. He's not as ripped up as he does looking like the pictures that you see online. Like, I don't know if you – he's ripped. Don't get me wrong. He's very athletic. But
I mean, even still on the Contender Series, he was looking pretty fit.
Yeah, but he's not like fit, more like a Volkov kind of fit, not like –
Yeah, no, like in his Fight Finder photo, he looks like one of the Hemsworth brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he lacks head movement. He will catch a kick to get the fight to the ground. Not merely a wrestler, but I like that he like on the Contender Series, he was advancing in position on the ground, landing good ground and pound. He was looking for crucifix at times. As far as prediction goes, this is as weak of a heavyweight fight as there is. Lukasz is the way better athlete. He's the more skilled fighter. But Buday is so much bigger than him. He's going to have like 40 pounds on, 30, 40 pounds. Mm-hmm. And he's smart. He knows where he wants to fight, and he puts himself in that range immediately. I think this fight's going to look a lot like we saw of the Barnett fight with the smaller Lukasz Brzeski just pushed against the cage, out-muscled against the cage, getting knees. I think we're going to have Buday winning a really ugly slapping titties battle. Give me Buday by decision.
I'm with you all the way here. And the other concerning thing is that despite his size and despite, the fact that he, again, probably does have to cut some weight to make 265, cardio is not particularly an issue for him. He fights at kind of a deliberate pace. And he was not the more tired guy when the Barnett fight ended. So it's not even that like Brzeski can outweight and outlast and turn the Jets on in the third round or something. I'm with you. This is the anti-fight of the night. This is the smoke break special. Like, don't smoke, but if you do smoke during this fight.
Unless the cigarette company wants to sponsor us, then we'll pump the shit out of smoking.
Oh yeah, thank you for smoking.
Don't listen to the Surgeon General. What do they know? Grab a Newport. In fact, that's so good for you. You can do two at a time.
Smoke 2 at a time, filterless.
Just that, obviously, for the kiddos, that's just a joke.
Just a joke. This fight is a joke, but Buday by decision.
Yep.
We head now to the welterweight division for a matchup between Jason Witt and Josh Quinlan. Witt, the 35-year-old Glory MMA and fitness export, is 19-8 overall. He is 2-3 in the UFC and has alternated wins and losses throughout his UFC run. He is currently coming off a loss. That was a second-round TKO at the hands of Phil Rowe back in February at UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Strickland. Prior to that, he took a majority decision over Brian Barberena in a real fun fight last July. He will be welcoming to the UFC Quinlan, the 29-year-old Las Vegas native, is 5-0 as a professional with 1 no contest. This will be his UFC debut. He won his way onto UFC roster last season at Dana White's Contender Series, absolutely thrashing Logan Urban in about 45 seconds. That was overturned when he failed his post-fight drug test. For those keeping track at home, this was an actual performance-enhancing drug. I believe it was drostanolone, but an actual steroid. This wasn't one of your weed no contest, of which we have at least one on this card that I can think of.
And his punishment is a contract in the UFC. Nice job.
His punishment is a contract in the UFC and a fairly soft landing in the form of Witt, if we're being completely honest. At least that's what the bookmakers seem to think, as Quinlan is minus 225 to get back on track in his UFC debut. Witt available at plus 185 if you so choose. You mentioned the whole minus athlete thing on this card. I don't know who your picks are, but anyone outside of the top two fights on the card, because I think Santos, Hill, Luque, and Neal are all at least decent athletes, and a couple of them are great. Plus, Quinlan is one of the guys outside of those top two fights that strikes me as a plus athlete. He's long and rangy for a welterweight, pretty fast hands and feet. Like, I have no idea whether he can dunk a basketball, but I give him more of a chance. Craig, just going with our gold standard of a guy that, okay, at that height, as a professional athlete in any sport, you should be able to dunk.
I think if him and Jason Witt did that, what is it called, where the football players jump up and hit those like things? Yeah,
just the high jump. Oh, dude.
Yeah, I think he jumps higher than Jason Witt.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, he outjumps Jason Witt by a full foot, because I think he's a couple inches taller than Witt. And Witt is just, if there's a prototypical Glory MMA and fitness fighter, he might be it. You can roll him right out there with James Krause himself, with Julian Marquez, with just the blue collar, grindy fighters that it's deceptive because they'll have a good number of submissions on their record, but they really just want to brawl. Jason Witt, when he decides to embrace his wrestling, decent offensive wrestler. Again, for a guy that is not a plus athlete, he's got slow entries, but gets takedowns through persistence and just physical strength. He certainly put that to use against Barberena. Then against Rowe, he, threw that back in the junk pile, and Rowe, Rowe knocked him out. If he decides to embrace his wrestling against Quinlan, this becomes a more interesting fight, because otherwise he is tailor-made for Josh Quinlan to get a highlight reel finish in his first UFC fight. You saw what Quinlan had to offer in the 47 seconds of work against Logan Urban last year. I know he was on a performance-enhancing drug. I'm sure it enhanced his performance, but just the speed, the power. He had hit Urban upside the head about 3 times before Urban knew it was happening to him. There are a lot of unknowns here. Obviously, this is almost a full year removed from that fight. Quinlan has served his suspension. We may find out how dependent he was on those testosterone analogs. If he looks like a completely different guy, like I'm about to say about someone further up this card, then that'll be one thing. But I'm guessing that we get about 90 or 95% of that Josh Quinlan. And given that Jason Witt doesn't always fight to his own best advantage, I understand kind of why the line is what it is. Give me Josh Quinlan to find Witt's chin sometime in the first 2 rounds. I'll say Quinlan by second round TKO.
Yeah. So while you're talking about, side note, guys, sidetrack off this fight for a second. You were talking about Jason Witt beating Brian Barberena. Like, I just imagine Brian Barberena beating Robbie Lawler. Like, I don't know how it is in Houston, but in New England, where ultimate ball busters, I just imagine Brian Barberena hanging out with his friends, dude, everything's going so great for me right now. I'm on a 3-fight winning streak. I just beat back-to-back fights. I beat Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler. I just knocked out Robbie Lawler, my biggest win of my career. And then just having a friend be like, yeah, but you also lost to Jason Witt in the same same year. How does that happen? How do you lose to Jason Witt but beat Robbie Lawler in the same year? I'm talking about, obviously I'm not talking about a 12-month span.
Yeah, like the rolling year.
What the fuck?
We don't have quite the same ball busting culture. It's a much more lovey-dovey culture down here.
Oh yeah.
I think that's kind of reflected in your and my different approaches. Where you're harsh on the local scene to you, the Southern New England scene, in the way that, a man would be to his own kids. Well, I'm literally sitting here in a t-shirt I got from Alex Morono's wife.
Yeah, like if I was friends with Alex Malone, I'd be like, yeah, you won the fight, but like pride rules, you lose. Anyways, back to this one. I'm worried about the line. Like because of Jason Witt's style, like Jason Witt could easily just wrestle himself to a victory. Like I wouldn't bet on it. Like if I was a better, like I'd either go like with the underdog or Witt, or I would just pass altogether. Witt he's a grinder. He's not, obviously he's not a great athlete. He's very flat footed. He's kind of slow. His chin is high in the air. His hands are not fast. But what he does do, he positions himself in a chance to win by constantly pressing the action. I like that he goes to the body. He has this. You mentioned Gloria. I mean, he has this like country boy, Missouri boy strength where, yeah, he doesn't have the greatest. Like he's not Josh Koscheck blasting through you, but everything he does is hard. Like he has some sting on his shots. He throws some hard kicks. I am worried about his chin. Like I'll say that he was knocked dead by Semmelsberger. He was knocked out by Phil Rowe in his last one.
He was knocked out by Takashi Sato in under a minute. Like all of his losses in the UFC have been knockouts. Yeah.
Now his striking is simply to set up his wrestling. And like you said, he's not when we think about the best wrestlers in the UFC, we're not thinking Jason Witt. But you're right. Like if he can get to your hips, he's got this country boy strength, but he just lift you up. I mean, he look at like Cole Williams, right? He picks Cole Williams and walks around the cage and then slams him. Kind of remind me a little bit of like Matt Hughes, Frank Trigg 2 kind of thing. Good top control. He's got an old school like Mark Coleman style where he likes to sit in the guy's guard and just kind of land elbows. And he got a submission in that fight. So Quinlan, it is concerning when the last thing we saw him was on some kind of performance enhancer. It's hard to have confidence, especially like a negative, would you say negative 250 or something like that?
It's 225, but yeah.
Okay, so he's pretty good favorite. He fights out of both stances. He's a pocket boxer. He's got fast hands. He's got good power. Again, a little worried about that power, but he's got good power. He kind of wings his shots, hard calf kicks, a lot of like boxing L stepping to kind of sidestep away from things. The one time, I mean, he's got a perfect record, but the one time I have seen him in trouble is when he's being pressed. He likes to be the one just marching down his opponent, not being pressed back. So that's something that Jason Witt does do well, is kind of force you on your back foot. But he's stuffed a lot of takedowns from what I've seen of Josh Quinlan. He's not much of an offense wrestler himself, but he does have 2 submission wins. So Quinlan is a little bit of a wild card. He has good power, but Witt, it's like you said, when it goes bad for Witt, it is really bad. But he has this dirt dog style where he can kind of make it a grimy Darren Elkins type fight, and he could win if he continue to keep kind of moving forward and pressing such a wrestle heavy game. And if you can't stuff his takedowns, you'll be in trouble. But I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with the newcomer. I'm going to say Quinlan catches him. And I'm going to say, you know what? I picked all decisions. I want to go with a stoppage too. And you said when things go bad for Witt, he gets knocked out cold and it's early. I'll say it happens again. And I'm going to say this last we see of Witt. I say Quinlan knocks him out in the first round.
And these are 2 women that are both 3-4 in the UFC and have approached it and gotten there and gotten to this matchup on Saturday by about as opposite a set of paths as 2 women could possibly take. As one of them came in as one of the more anticipated free agent signings by the UFC in the last 5 or 6 years, and the other came in as a sacrificial lamb and basically laughing stock. And here they kind of meet in the middle, and the fight is surprisingly interesting, even if it's one we never thought we would have gotten way back when. Lipski, the 28-year-old Brazilian, is 14-7 overall. She is 3-4 in the UFC since joining as the outgoing KSW flyweight champ. She did win her last time out. It was a pretty decisive unanimous decision win over Mandy Bohm at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Spann last September. That put the brakes on a 2-fight losing streak for her. Both of those second-round stoppage losses against Antonina Shevchenko and Montana De La Rosa. She'll be meeting Cachoeira. The 33-year-old Brazilian is 11-4 overall. She also, of course, is 3-4 in the UFC. She also won her last time out. That was a unanimous decision win over Ji Yeon Kim back in February at UFC Fight Night Makhachev versus Green. That helped put a first-round submission loss to Jillian Robertson last December in the rear view for her. The odds on this one, they're not off the charts, but Lipski is a moderate favorite. She's minus 165 or so. Cachoeira plus 140 on the comeback. I mean, Keith, Priscila Cachoeira was the who? She seemed to be the worst undefeated fighter they could find to be there for Valentina Shevchenko's flyweight debut. The UFC created the flyweight division. They created it with that season of Tough. Shevchenko dropped down to 135. She was the obvious queen in waiting, and they gave her Cachoeira, and she took a beatdown of the year contender. Oh, yeah. I think it was my beatdown of the year for 2018 before getting choked out in the second round. Then she went on to lose her next 2 UFC fights to women who are not Valentina Shevchenko in the form of Molly McCann and Luana Carolina. And if there had been a Shillen and Duffy show in May 2019, I'm pretty comfortable we both would have had Cachoeira on the cut list after that third straight loss. But since then, she's bounced back. Same as I said about Oleksiejczuk. She's not a top 10 flyweight, but she's proven she belongs. And the women she's beaten, Gina Mazzani, Shanna Dobson, Ji Yeon Kim, all kind of borderline talents as far as belonging in the UFC flyweight division. They all are either out or on their way out. But she's shown signs of life. As she's grown in confidence, she's rediscovered the power that she did have on the Brazilian scene, even if she's still just very wild and sloppy on the feet. She's still pretty physically strong. She's not a Lipski level athlete, but I don't think she's a minus athlete I think she's about average as an athlete by comparison to the women that she's fought. She's fought Molly McCann, Gina Mazzani, Jillian Robertson. She slots right in alongside them as an athlete. And she's meeting Lipski. Lipski seemed like a super bust coming out of KSW. I was so high on her as a fighter. She was 23, 24. She was not only was she champ in KSW, but her nickname was the Violence Queen, and it fit because she was so vicious. She was a finisher on the ground as well as on the feet. Explosive striker with a underratedly good ground game. A lot of the same things you could say about Shevchenko, she seemed to display, and she was beating good women over there. Her last couple wins in KSW, like Diana Belbitsa, made it to the UFC. Silvana Gomez is in the UFC right now. I mean, we make fun of Mariana Moraes right now because she's basically blown up to 155 and fighting Kayla Harrison over in PFL. But at 125, she was actually a pretty decent fighter. And when Lipski got to the UFC, not only did she lose her first 2 fights, but she just didn't look like the same fighter. Like a lot of the speed and explosion seemed to be gone. She looked flat. Like I would have expected her to be able to run circles around Joanne Wood and Molly McCann, 2 of the more kind of flat-footed fighters in the UFC, and she really didn't. And her gas tank wasn't great, and her power didn't seem to be connecting. I'm not saying that Ariane Lipski was a walking ball of horse steroids over in Poland. I don't know. There are all kinds of things you have to adjust to, when you start competing a continent away under slightly different rule sets and everything. But whatever those problems were, she's fixed them, sorta, kinda. Yeah. Honestly, she's in the exact same place. She's in the exact same place Cachoeira is. She's not top 10 because we've seen what happens when she runs into even borderline decent flyweights, but she's no longer in immediate danger of her job. Like, this is not a pink slip derby, and it easily could have been at some point. But yeah, we broke down Mandy Baum's last fight just a couple weeks ago, and I said Mandy Baum is the one who briefly got me to believe once again in the 2016 Ariane Lipski. I'm picking Lipski to win this one, but not in a way that really rekindles the fire, because Cachoeira she's durable. I think she's stronger than Baum. I don't think Lipski's going to be able to have the kind of advantages on the feet as well as on the ground that she did it against Baum. Give me Lipski to win to win a decision over Cachoeira, but Cachoeira wins the third round. And, you know, we end up not being particularly more high on either woman coming out of this one.
Yeah, this is intriguing. If Fantasy Lipski, that Molly McCann loss is looking a little better than it did at that time. She's got that going for her. Yeah, this is why is this on the main card fight? That was a little surprising to me, but yeah, Lipski, she's a pressure striker who fights with high volume kickboxing style. She's got more like stinging power than she has fight ending power. She did drop bomb in her last fight multiple times, which is good. That was her best showing of recent history. Kicks are such a part of her game, but she's a very weak defensive wrestler. I mean, she got out wrestled by Antonia Shevchenko. That's the one I can't get past. She had, but she does have 3 submission wins. She showed that she can get some takedowns herself. Cachoeira, I won't let this point go. I left it in my notes on purpose. I just want to point out that Cachoeira probably shouldn't be in the UFC after illegally gouging Jillian Robinson on multiple occasions in their fight. She should have been punched for that. But she's a pressure striker. She's a boxer that marches down her foes. She tends to chase a little bit instead of cutting off the cage. Like, she's not as intelligent enough. Like, I don't want to say intelligent. That's a word, but like fight savvy to do that. She's a bit of a brawler. She wants to get in the pocket. She wants to throw down. She almost like ducks her head and just throws wild. She wings her shots. She does have good power. I mean, we saw it against Shayna Dobson. When she got inside, she was landing some nice mean elbows on Ji Young Kim, but she drops her hands, leave her open to counters. She almost like holds her hands down by her side at time. She keeps her chin high in the air. Is just ready to be countered. She tends to square up a little bit too much. So she doesn't really have like a base that she can kind of get dropped because of that. She will look for a takedown, but she isn't a wrestler. She's a decent grappler, though she was submitted by Jillian Robinson. But she can take a beating. I mean, we saw that against Shevchenko. And the reason why she beat Kim is she had the cardio. She was still pressing hot in the third round. So I think that was a really good call, since she probably win the third round. I'm with you, man. I think this is a tough fight to call. Lipski is more technical. If she can stick and move, I think she can do great. But Cachoeira is going to stay in her face. She's going to press the action. She's going to throw some bombs. And it wouldn't surprise me if she just overwhelms Lipski with like aggression. This was, to me, was one of probably the hardest fight on the entire card to pick. I have no clue. I'm going to go with the technique and speed of Lipski. So I'm with you. Give me Lipski. I'm going to say it's an extremely close fight. Give me Lipski in a split decision.
Next up is a women's strawweight matchup that is evidence that the UFC hates its own announcers, as this is Yazmin versus Yazmin. Yazmin Jauregui and Yazmin Lucindo.
Who's the commentator? Who's the commentator? Do we know?
Well, it can't be Cruz.
Yeah, well, that's well, you never know. They could go PFL style.
Just have a rip his suit off, and he's
that was still pretty badass when the PFL did that. But
yeah,
if it's like Michael Bisping, he's definitely making a Yazmin. I think Yazmin's gonna win.
Yep. And
John Anik will have the pronunciations perfect if he's doing it. All right, sorry to interrupt your intro.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested now, but yeah, Yazmin Jauregui, 23-year-old Mexican, is a perfect 8-0 as a professional. She is making her debut, of course, but she is coming fresh off of winning Combate Global's one-night Grand Prix last August. There she beat 3 women in the same night, including Stephanie Frausto, and Claire Lopez, both of them decent fighters. But this is her first fight in almost a year. She was scheduled to fight Estela Nunes. Nunes dropped out, I believe, with an injury. So in comes Brazilian Yazmin Lucindo, who is instantly the youngest person on roster. The 20-year-old from northeastern Brazil, 13-4 in her mixed martial arts career. She fought just back in April. She is on a 6 or 7 fight win streak. Her last career loss was to Barbara Ascioli. You may remember her as a 1 or 2 time Invicta veteran. Thing about Lucindo is she might be cutting age. I'm not accusing. I'm just saying the Fight Finder team is looking into it because for her record to be what it is, and for her to be 20 right now, she would have had to debut something like before she was even 15 and a half. Like she would have had to debut at 15 and not even like right before her 16th birthday. She was just flat out like 15 years and 4 months or something. So
Jay's coming for her. He's gonna discover it. He's got him.
Oh my goodness. We need to do like a MMA Law and Order where like he's the DA and like you're the cop. Like
dun dun.
Like you go question Lucindo and like Jay's like like having people like research.
Remember in the Princess, I'm going all Disney movies. Remember in Princess Bride where like the guy's following Andre the Giant and them, and he keeps getting all the clues, and it's like the smallest thing, and he comes up with this huge explanation. That's like Jay just following him around. He's they better not hide. Jay's coming for him.
At any rate,
I can't wait for the other. Okay, I'm going to talk shit for a second. I can't wait for the other fight. What do you want to call it? Record keepers to suddenly get try to steal the credit from Jay's hard work.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's a known phenomenon. It's still good to be first. Perhaps due to the level of competition Lucindo has taken on, perhaps due to Jauregui again looking very good in winning that one night Grand Prix. There's a pretty wide line here. Yazmin Jauregui is minus 240, Lucindo plus 190. Keith, like you were for the Blackshear fight, I will not profess to know much about Yazmin Lucindo. So tell me a little bit about this fight.
All right. Who do you know who was the youngest before? Was it? Do we know whose record she's now surpassed? I'm
not sure. Like I remember being told recently. It's like it was someone like Tabitha Ricci.
Okay.
Like Ricci and Blanchfield are both like 22 or 23 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just imagine like
Tracy O'Neal's like 23.
Yeah, I just imagine the UFC commentator be like, "Yeah, we got a 20-year-old. Like, it's such a big deal. She can't even drink alcohol." And then like, someone from one championship is like, "What? You got an 11-year-old Victoria Lee fighting?" Victoria Lee just had her first communion right afterwards. Cage fight. I was up way too late last night, guys. So that's why you get I'm getting a little loopy today. Yeah, so yeah, we got two people that no one really knows. Okay, how do I Yazmin Jauregui? How do I help me out? Help me out.
They're probably gonna say Jauregui.
Jauregui. Okay, so that's the Mexican fighter who just won Combate's tournament, and then you have
Yazmin
Lucindo, who's a 20-year-old Brazilian.
Yep.
Jauregui, I really liked what I saw of her. She's athletic, high output striker, fast hands, very accurate. She attacks with a lot of combinations, a lot of tackling combination, then sidestepping, creating different angles. She has really good power. She has 5 knockout wins in the very first round. As I already said, she avoids a lot of. She's always kind of guessing, kind of L stepping, moving, cutting angles, hard calf kicks. She will throw some naked calf kicks, but I don't like that. I think she just set those up. But she's young too, so she has the time. Gets in the clinch. She's busy in clinch with striking. I haven't seen much of her offensive wrestling. That's a little like a question mark I have. She has been taken down in some fights, which I don't like that. But she popped right back up because she's very athletic. Now, Lucindo, you mentioned 20 years old. Yeah, I question that a little bit too. She's beaten a lot of cans. I mean, but what I saw her, and again, I didn't see there's not a lot of film on her, but pretty raw on the feet. She kind of just swings, but she does have some good natural power. She has 8 KO wins in her career, which is nice, especially if she's close to 20 years old. She hasn't really come into her power. She can get to the clinch though. That's where she wants to battle. Get in the clinch, look for body lock takedowns. Gets to the ground. I like that she advances to a better position. I seen in one fight, she quickly took him out. Has some hard ground and pound. She has 2 submission wins. The one thing is she has been submitted twice herself. So being that our records say one's 23, the other one's 20. Again, a little bit of question back then. I trust the best in the business, Jay Petrie, to figure that out. The tape study, though, can't be trusted because, one, they're so young. Two, there's just so many. It's really good to look good against certain people when you face really low level, and they both face a little low level. That said, Jauregui looks way more advanced on the feet. From what I've seen, she is very fast. She's a much better athlete. I think she's going to have to stick and move and avoid the clinch. But if she can, I think she tees off on Lucindo. Give me Jauregui by second round TKO.
I can't add much to that. Like the amount of tape I was able to see on Lucindo, and there's practically nothing on her early fights. Just low quality. Talking about the video and the fights
on Lucindo.
Yeah.
Well, you know why? Because you said she started when you're 7 years old. The camera quality back, the camera quality back in 1998 wasn't that good. No, actually, what did I say? 98. Jeez, I'm aging myself.
No, I mean, but give me Yazmin Jauregui with her bigger frame, better reach, much niftier striking to light Lucindo up as well. In fact, I was kind of leaning the exact same direction you were, second round TKO. We head next to the middleweight division for a matchup between Bruno Silva and Gerald Meerschaert. Silva, the 33-year-old Brazilian, is 22-7 overall. He is 3-1 in the UFC since joining as the departing M1 middleweight champ. He won his first 3 fights out of the gate, all of them knockouts, those over Wellington Turman, Andrew Sanchez, and Jordan Wright, only to run into Alex Pereira this March at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev and dropped a unanimous decision. He will try to get back to winning ways against Meerschaert, who is also looking to bounce back from a loss. The 34-year-old Wisconsinite is 34-15 overall. He is 9-7 in the UFC. He lost via unanimous decision in April to Krzysztof Jotko. That was at UFC on ESPN Font versus Vera. Prior to that, he also had won 3 straight in a row, and in his case, all 3 were submissions. Those over Bartosz Fabinski, Mahmoud Muradov, and Dustin Stoltzfus. The line here, fairly wide. Silva is minus 260 as the favorite. Meerschaert plus 220 as the underdog. And Keith, I just don't get it. I mean, if you're just looking at a picture of these guys and their highlight reel, I understand why you'd make it almost 3-1 favorite. But have these people never seen Gerald Meerschaert fight? Gerald Meerschaert is, I mean, we have given him the F-word middle name alongside Paul Craig and Darren Elkins before, because he is always the slower guy. He's always a less athletic guy, and he still wins more than he loses. And Bruno Silva is exactly the kind of guy that he has been tripping up for 10 years now. Yeah,
look at him against Muradov. Look at the athleticism gap between those two guys.
Yeah.
I love him.
I love him too. Gerald Meerschaert is awesome. And frankly, so is Bruno Silva. Like Bruno Silva,
he's scary.
He's a terrifying dude. His nickname is Blindado. Blindado is Portuguese for armored, and it's because he looks like a fucking suit of armor. Yeah. You see the pecs and like the shoulders on the guy. He looks like armor. And even when he ran into someone in Pereira that's just basically just a bigger, better version of himself, it's not like he got like knocked out of his sneakers. He lost. This is a 2 true outcomes fight. Either Silva lights up Meerschaert sometime in the first 7 minutes of the fight, or Meerschaert hangs on to tap him out in the second half of the fight, or at least just be draped all over him, dragging him back to the ground and making him miserable on his way to winning a 29-28 decision. Those are your 2 true outcomes. And I think of those 2 outcomes as more or less equally likely. This should be close to a pick'em fight, in my opinion. Wow. Silva blew right through his first 3 UFC opponents, but 2 of those 3 opponents wanted to strike with him and just weren't as good. Like Jordan Wright wanted to strike with him. Wellington Turman wanted to strike with him. Andrew Sanchez coulda, woulda, got it to the ground, but he wasn't able to. But he's not Gerald Meerschaert. He's not as durable. He's not as opportunistic a grappler. He probably not as big. Meerschaert isn't super athletic, but he is a pretty big guy for a middleweight. I'm leaning Silva here. I'm going like the third outcome where Silva comes out like a house on fire, has Meerschaert hurt early, but then has to hang on to win. So give me Silva by decision, but I'm not at all surprised if Meerschaert is on this guy's back and choking him out late in the second round.
Yeah, I agree with so much that you're saying in this. Gerald Meerschaert should not be that big of an underdog. Really, really surprising. I love Gerald Meerschaert. I just hope that if he goes on, say he loses this fight, say he goes on a lose streak, I hope we never have like a Gerald Meerschaert. I hope I never view him the way I view like Sam Alvey, where I'm like sick of seeing him fight. I feel like that's happened to guys before in the past where they used to be super excited as a middle of the road kind of overachiever. I hope we don't get that with it because Gerald Meerschaert, he's a gamer. I mean, he's a gritty vet. He's going to stay in your face. He gets stronger as the fight goes on. He's going to have good volume. He's not a strong offensive wrestler. He never has been, but somehow he can create a scramble, get the fight to the ground, especially as his opponent starts tiring due to Meerschaert's output. He's a very bad defense.
That was Muradov for sure.
Yeah. He's a very bad defensive wrestler. He makes it worse because he'll jump for a guillotine, but he's a submission threat. He's good at putting his opponents in bad positions. He struggles to get off the bottom, but he can get a sub off the bottom. I am worried about his chin though. I mean, he's been brutally knocked out in a couple fights. Ian Heinisch knocked him out cold. Obviously, Chimaev, hit him into next week. But a guy like Muradov was, as you mentioned, he's a big puncher, and he couldn't finish Meerschaert. And every time you write this guy off, all of a sudden he wins a fight you're not expecting. Now, Bruno Silva, he's fun. I mean, he fights out of both stances. He has huge power in both hands. I said it before. He's like a middleweight Francis Ngannou. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, just trying to get some good podcasting in, trick of the trade a little bit, but he's one of these guys. He doesn't have to land clean. And that's what I mean by like a Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. Like they never have to land clean. They can just land a grazing shot. Yoel Romero was one of those guys, and he can put you out. And he actually fights similar to like a Yoel Romero where he'll sit back, kind of try to conserve it, and then he darts in, and it's just wild haymaking bombs. Because of that, he gets tagged up a little bit. He leaves himself open. He throws from his hips. I mean, Jordan Wright was kind of landing some good shots, some big shots on him. But then he could just put your lights out one shot. I mean, he had a flying knee in one of his fights. Strong plum clinch. I go back to like the Alexander Slamenko fight where he had some success in the plum clinch. But not a great defensive grappler. I mean, Wellington Turman took him down. Andrew Sanchez took him down a bunch of times. He really struggles to get back up. Now, he is a BJJ black belt, though, but I don't know. I think it's one of those.
He's got that Thiago Silva, Thiago Santos.
Like one of those ones like I used to coach little kid wrestling, and I mean, the little kids. And we used to have an awards banquet. And, the kid who's like MVP of the team who, won this tournament, won that tournament. But like it's like 8-year-olds. I got to give every kid an award. So I was making up awards and shit. Like biggest heart, which means the kid who sucks the most, but kept coming to practice.
Oh, I like that because my junior year in high school, I won most improved wrestler, which means I won the You Sucked Last Year award.
Yeah, that's like, yeah. I gave a couple of those out. The kid who sucked for 2 years, I gave him most improved, because he's been on the team for 2 years. And then the biggest heart, and like the parent gets all excited and the grandparent, they take the picture, and they get all excited, but everyone else winks means like, oh, that's the kid who sucks the worst. You gave him the biggest heart one, citizenship award, nicest kid or something like that.
So
I feel
Bruno
like
Silva has the Miss Congeniality belt.
Yeah, they're like, man, or like, hey, did you hear that Bruno might not come back next month? Like he might not pay his dues. Hey, give him his black belt. He'll come back. Like it might be a little something going. Dude, Bruno Silva's gonna absolutely murder me if I run into him one day. But as far as the prediction of this fight goes, I think your breakdown was absolutely perfect. The deeper the fight goes on, the more I start to favor Meerschaert more and more. It really reminds me of a fight. Of all people that I watched the fight with once, I remember watching the fight. I was hanging out with my sister. I have two sisters. My oldest sister, and we were watching. I don't know, UFC, say, I don't know, 38 or something like this. It's whatever it was. It was Evan Tanner versus Phil Baroni. And I would say, hey, who are you picking? And she'd make a prediction. And I looked at him and she's like, oh my God. Like, Evan Tanner looked good, but Phil Baroni, I mean, he looked like he hung out like Venice Beach all day long. Tanned up, jacked up. And I turned to her and I said, I'll make a bet with you. I will take Phil Baroni, and I don't know exactly what I said. Say it was 3 minutes. I say, I will take Phil Baroni for 3 minutes. If it hits the 3 minute mark, I don't care how bad he's beating that other guy's ass, I will switch my pick to the other guy. And then it went exactly as I expected. Phil Baroni's putting on Evan Tanner, killing him, and then gassed out. Evan Tanner takes over. That's how I feel like this fight. Like there's going to be a point in this fight where if Meerschaert survives, there's going to be a part where all of us who've watched a lot of fights will know Meerschaert's going to come back and win this fight.
Mm-hmm.
When that'll be, I don't know. The problem is he's going to have to avoid the onslaught of Silva right out the gate, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think Silva's going to put him out. So it's kind of weird for me to say there's going to be a moment. I'm saying it could be. If it goes deep, there'll be that moment, then we'll know. I just don't think we make it that far. I think, and I hate doing this pick because I love me some Gerald Meerschaert. I think Bruno Silva's going to hit him with a big shot. I think he's going to finish up with some follow-up ones. And I think Silva's going to knock him out. Give me Silva by first round TKO.
There you go. Two reluctant, slightly depressed picks for Bruno Silva. Nothing personal against him. We just love Gerald Meerschaert to get it done at UFC San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, Bruno Silva, I've never hated a guy with the most heart.
Yeah. The 6-fight main card of UFC on ESPN 41 starts with a 120-pound catchweight matchup between habitual strawweights Angela Hill and Lupi Godinez. Hill, the 37-year-old Maryland native by way of San Diego, is 13-12 overall. She is 7-10 in the UFC since joining as the departing Invicta strawweight champ. She is on a 3-fight losing streak. Those coming against Tecia Torres, Amanda Lemos, and Verna Jandiroba. All three of those by decision. The most recent of those, the Jandiroba loss, was back in May at UFC on ESPN, Blachowicz versus Rakic. She will try one more time to get things back on track against Godinez. The 28-year-old Mexican is 8-2 overall. She's 3-2 in the UFC, and she has won her last 2 straight. Those 2 wins, both by decision against Loma Lookboonmee and Ariane Carnelossi. The Carnelossi fight was at UFC 274 back in May. I cannot find any odds available for this fight yet. I think it is probably safe to say that Godinez is going to open as a comfortable favorite, but be sure to check those when you see this on Monday morning. And if there are any odds by then, I will try to post them on the screen. Keith, I have hung on to hope in Angela Hill for a long time. You and I have been doing these podcasts for over 2 years now. We have picked 6 Angela Hill fights together. She is 1-5 across those 6 fights, with the only win coming over Ashley Yoder.
Sam Alvey would love to have that record.
If she loses and stays on roster, she is entering the BJ Penn, Sam Alvey range. On the one hand, even though she has lost 5 of 6, they still give Angela Hill no breaks. The 5 losses: Claudia Gadelha, Michelle Waterson, Tecia Torres, Amanda Lemos, Verna Jandiroba. The worst fighter in that entire run is Verna Jandiroba, who was like a borderline top 10 fighter.
Who was the one she beat? Labumi? Was that the one that
Ashley
was
Yoder. Ashley Yoder.
Oh, Ashley,
Labumi was the last one before this streak.
So they're like, oh, you beat Ashley Yoder? Okay, he has 5 top 10 opponents in a row now.
Yeah, just absolutely savage. And here, I mean, Godinez, at least in terms of rankings, is another little step down from Jandiroba. Like, Godinez has won a couple in a row, but this is a step up in competition for Godinez and a step down for Hill.
Hill beats Godinez. Her next fight, they're going to make her go up to 125 and fight Valentina Shevchenko. No, they make her fight both Shevchenkos same time.
This is a matchup. If these two were meeting in 2019, early 2020, this is exactly the kind of person that Angela Hill would be able to beat the brakes off of. It's not there anymore. Like, Hill at her best used to have very good takedown defense. That has started to slip. She used to be much quicker than her opponents. At 37, she's still quick. Like, she's still a plus athlete for the division, but she's no longer like super fast twitch, like blindingly quick. The clinch is not her safe spot against strong women anymore. I mean, there was a time, like, she beat up Loma Lubumi in the clinch, a world Muay Thai champ. That was barely over 2 years ago. That's not her anymore. Torres and Lemos, and Torres is tiny. Like, it's in her nickname. And Torres was physically fine against Hill. Lemos, like, kind of bullied Hill. Godinez is going to be able to get takedowns against Angela Hill, I think. Just Hill won't be able to keep her off her. I expect Godinez will get takedowns early and often, and Hill's still super tough, super survivable. Heart's kind of the last thing to go, but I expect kind of a depressing one-sided washing here. I think this may be the last gasp for Angela Hill in the UFC, and I think it's Godinez hitting probably like 6 or 7 takedowns and racking up more than half the fight in control time. Give me Godinez by a decision in which she wins all 3 rounds.
Yeah, while you're talking, I was checking out her Instagram, Angela Hill, because she's always a great follow. Even though I'm not very active on Instagram, I like to just look and read people's statuses. She said that this fight's at a catch weight.
It is 120. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. You probably said that. I apologize. Mm-hmm. Who does that favor, do you think? I know you pick Godinez, but
I think I don't think it particularly favors either woman, but if it favors either, maybe Hill just slightly, because she's always looks a little drawn on the scale. It's never really told on her. She's not had gas tank problems. Her chin obviously is fine. I mean, like, she's still like, she's still never been knocked out. But the little 5 pounds grace, yeah, give me the 37-year-old to enjoy that a little more.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to see if we were going to be in agreement with that. Hill, yeah, I think I made these like Sam Alvey jokes, but like when I look at a fighter like Sam Alvey, like, he's shot. I don't think Angela Hill's shot. I think it has a lot to do with matchmaking. And she's just been matched against some really tough people. If she was matched against, like, if Angela Hill was matched against the right people, she could be 5-1 right now instead of 1-5. You know, she was put against Courtney Casey's again and stuff like that. That's not the case. She's always thrown to the wolves. She's athletic. She's a good kickboxer, especially from range. She can work outside, using her footwork, using her good head movement. She's kind of a point fighter. You know, not a big like power hitter, but she can work behind a jab. Likes to slip. She likes to like do this like slipping to one side, throwing the other side shot. Very similar to like what Dominic Cruz does. I like her check.
They are teammates. Worth noting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, honestly, it's probably what she got it. I mean, she got good footwork and she does that. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. She beat up Claudia Gadelha with nice body work, but she can overextend her shots at times, kind of leaving her open to counters. She's good in the Muay Thai clinch, but I agree with you saying. I think that might be fading a little bit. She's been starting to get out-muscled by some people. She's best when it's not like a wrestling Muay Thai clinch where they're like dig and unhooks, more like what she can kind of get the inside position, start framing, blasting knees up the middle. But you mentioned it. She's a terrible defensive wrestler. Like, you would get given her more credit earlier in her career. I don't think she was that good then. She's terrible now. It's what cost her from being an elite fighter. We've seen it fight after fight. She struggles to get off the bottom. Rana Marcos, Claudia Gadelia. You mentioned Michelle Waterson, like an undersized Michelle Waterson. Verna Jandiroba. I mean, there was no prayer against Verna Jandiroba. Now, excuse me. Godinez is a guy, a girl that we both been kind of happy on. I've been pumping Godinez huge. She's a wrestle boxer who looked really good in her last fight. High output. She constantly presses forward, constantly cutting off the cage, works to get in the pocket, and then when she gets in there, she's in those close quarters, she unloads big power shots. I think she's got quick hands, good power. Her accurate right is a really good blow. I mean, she was blasting Silvana Gomez with that shot. She really generates good power because her legs, her base are always underneath her, and she is like, I always thought she was a good wrestler, but man, she put on a show in her last fight. Nice penetration steps, super strong. She gets to the hips. She's looking to lift up and slam. I mean, I said it before that she ragdolled Jessica Penne around. She ragdolled Silvana Gomez, Suarez, Luma Lukbunmi. Like, I mean, that girl, she's on the side. She's throwing her around. But what really impresses me out of all her wrestling displays is how easily she was taking down a very strong Ariane Canellosi, like taking her down with ease. And you can't out-muscle Canellosi. But she had a duck under against Canellosi in the fight. Mm-hmm. The only time I've seen her struggle to get someone down, that was the Carolina fight. But that was just someone who was just way too big for her, way out of her weight class. Mm-hmm. But if you try to take her down, she's really hard. She's on top. She's smothering top pressure. Really good in her last fight against Canellosi. Canellosi was trying to move a lot. She was following the hips, just riding her out like you'd see like a high-level NCAA, like almost in referee's position at time. She had some slick BJJ. She hit that belly-down armbar against Silvana Gomez. Hill is always a tough test for someone who's kind of moving up the ranks. If Hill can move, use her size, pick range, that's really good. But I doubt that. I think Godinez is a terrible stylistic matchup. I think she swarms Hill. I think she puts on a wrestling clinic. I'm seeing multiple 10-8 rounds. Give me Godinez in an absolute blowout decision. And what would you say? What's the betting odds?
We don't have any yet. But I expect that she's going to open up as a moderate favorite.
Yeah, if it's anywhere under, like, if she's less than a negative 200 favorite, and I don't, you know what I mean? And I want to say this to listeners because we love our listeners, and we have the best listeners. I mean, if they're willing to listen to like a 2-hour show with me telling stupid stories about friggin' gargoyles and we try to make some jokes and everything, like, they're the best. But we also get like unfair credit sometimes where we get people saying, "Oh, you give us the best betting advice." Like, we're not really a betting show, but hey, if you win money, cool, great. Like
our actual betting advice is don't do it. Yeah, unless we're sponsored. But
yeah. I mean, if you make money following us, awesome. If you make money by not following us, and you're like, hey, these guys are idiots, let me bet the other way, and it works for you, that's cool too. But if you want me to give a betting advice, if she's anywhere, and again, this could be where she could open as a negative 400 favorite, for all I know. I'm not that into the scene, but if she's less than a negative 200 favorite, I'm picking Godinez. Like throw your money on Godinez.
And I agree, because Godinez's strengths, as you already pointed out, match up really brutally with Hill's deficiencies. And I always ask, what's the upset potential? And here it's just not much, because Hill at this point, well, Hill's never been a one-shot knockout artist. So even a Godinez mistake, it might not even cost her a round, and it almost certainly won't cost her the fight.
Point. That's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. Yeah.
Like if Hill like stings her with like a knee or something, like Godinez could probably still take her down 3 seconds later and recover there, and she still wins the round.
Yeah, and before we go on, if you're looking for betting advice, like just strictly betting advice, their shows and articles aren't 2 hours long, but Sean Sheehan does like 5 bets for every single card. That's a good video, and then Jay Petrie puts out some betting advice too. That's a written article, but they're both
prime picks.
They're both really, really good. So check out those.
Yep. Next up, we have a featherweight matchup between Nate Landwehr and David Onama. Landwehr, the 34-year-old Tennessee native, is 15-4 overall. He is 2-2 since joining the UFC as the outgoing M1 featherweight champ. He has alternated wins and losses throughout that run. Debuted with a loss to Herbert Burns, bounced back against Darren Elkins, lost to Julian Erosa, and most recently choked out Ludovic Klein in the 3rd round at UFC Fight Night Ladd versus Dumont. That was all the way back last October, so he is coming back after just about 10 months off. He's going to try to get off of the pattern of wins and losses against a man in Onama who just wants to have his first normal fight in the UFC, and I'll explain that in just a moment. The 28-year-old Glory MMA and Fitness product is 10-1 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC. He entered the UFC as a promising Missouri, Kansas featherweight prospect, stepped up on short notice and took on Mason Jones at lightweight, lost by a unanimous decision. That was last October. From there, he knocked out Gabriel Benitez at UFC Fight Night Walker versus Hill this February in a fight that was scheduled for featherweight, but Benitez missed weight. And then he fought in July at UFC on ESPN Dos Anjos versus Fiziev, choking out Garrett Armfield, who stepped in on short notice when Austin Lingo dropped out of that fight. He now gets Landwehr, and if this fight takes place, this will be Onama's first fight with no late notice replacements and no weight weirdness. So here's hoping for normalcy for one of
the opposite now. Keep the streak going. Let's get some madness.
Like Landwehr like blows his knee out backstage, and because Benitez and Onama have already fought, Charlie Ontiveros fights David Onama at lightweight, and like.
And Landwehr gets mad and he throws a dolly through a bus or something. Let's go crazy.
I don't know what the odds are on that, but the odds on Onama winning are pretty steep. He is minus 225, Landwehr plus 175. Keith, I'm going to toss this to you, but for me, this is a matchup between a guy in Onama that you and I both said this guy was headed to the UFC anyway and seems to be delivering on that promise. And then a guy in Landwehr that I've been kind of pleasantly surprised. He's 2-2 in the UFC, but that's almost better than I expected when he was coming out of M1. Okay. How do you see this fight going? And are you still high on Onama as a future contender?
Yeah. I like Onama a lot. I like this fight. I think it's going to be an action-packed fight. I'm looking at the records, and just reminds me of he knocked out Gabriel Benitez in 4 minutes and 24 seconds. So Gabriel Benitez, last fight, he got knocked out in the very first round, moves up in weight, and he is currently the biggest favorite on the card, and it's not even betting favorite. It's not even close. Like, how often does that happen? You get knocked out in the first round, and then your next fight, you're the biggest favorite on the card. Like, that's – yeah. Seriously. I mean, I picked him to win, so I'll shut up. But you know what I'm doing? I'm trying to hedge my bets. So if Ontiveros wins, I can say, I told you. But as far as Onama, yeah – Onama was a guy when he fought Mason Jones in his debut, and and he was thrown in that last minute. I think we might have crunched him into our picks. I watched him, like, dude, I like Mason Jones too, but man, this kid's good. Like, there are a lot of things I liked, and I think I actually have added notes since then of good notes, all positive. Landwehr, I mean, he's an ultimate like veteran kind of guy. That's why I like this fight. Onama's a really skilled fighter. He can fight out of both stances, high volume striking, has a lot of weapons. He's really one of these guys that attacks with all 8 limbs. One of these Muay Thai style guys, fast, explosive. He has huge power. He can put himself out of position sometimes because he can overthrow and kind of be open to counters. So that's a little worried. But I like that he works all those secondary things like going to the step in knees. Now he will drop his hands a little bit and invite a brawl, but he gets wild and he's open in those brawls. But you're also playing with fire because if you get hit with one of Onama's shots, he can put you out. Some really, really good calf kicks. He doesn't set them up, so once he really kind of learns the technique and set them up, they'll even be more effective. You can kind of hide them a little bit. We saw it recently. He's an underrated grappler. I mean, he has a very Michael Chiesa style where he uses those long arms and legs and kind of reaches instead of shooting.
I like that comparison. That's so good.
Yeah. Thanks, man. He isn't a strong defensive wrestler. We saw him get taken down by Mason Jones like 8 times, but he has a submission threat. And we saw that in his last fight against Garrett Armstead. He can get a submission. As far as Landwehr's like everything opposite of Onama, where he's not this like explosive athlete, but he's a pressure guy, high output. He wants a brawl. He marches down his opponent constantly on the gas. More tough than skilled, willing to eat a shot to land on his own. He throws a hard, stinging jab, hard calf kicks. He's hittable. He has a lot of technical flaws. Like I go back to the Darren Elkins fight. Darren Elkins was landing some big shots on him because he was kind of squaring up, even though he put it on Darren Elkins too. But when he's not, so I talked about I said he wants a brawl on the feet, but then he'll close the distance. He's won the grind in there. He showed really good takedown defense against a guy like Darren Elkins, stuffing takedowns from the ultimate grinder in Darren Elkins. If he gets taken down, pretty good at popping back up. Good sub defense if you held him down. And he's got a really good gas tank. And that's the big, if he can close the distance, work in the clinch, grind Onama down. Onama, all these big explosive movements. That's his avenue to victory. I think this is a dope fight, though, especially if they exchange it on the feet. Because really nonstop. I don't think it lasts that long, though. If Landwehr presses it forward in a reckless manner to try to close the distance, he's going to get starched. I think that happens here. I say Onama catches Landwehr coming in. I think he puts him out in the very first round, and we go even bigger on Onama for his next fight. Give me Onama, first round TKO.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting thing, this Monday, as I was recording my non-Sherdog podcast, the news came up literally while we were recording that James Krause announced his retirement. James Krause, for those who are listening and might not know, he is longtime veteran fighter, still technically on UFC roster. I mean, he fought within the last year and a half, but the founder and head coach of Glory MMA and Fitness. And I just kind of pointed out that in Glory MMA, which is arguably the hottest up-and-coming camp in the sport over the last 2.5 years, he's kind of has this stable of fighters that he has made in his own image. You think of those fighters, and they're all kind of overachieving, not super athletic guys, most of whom, I mean, you have to have good gas tank, and most of them are good grapplers, and they're just super scrappy. They are, your Jason Witts, your Julian Marquez's, those guys.
Elliott.
Yeah. Tim Elliott and Gina Mazzani both went.
He'll cheat, but same thing.
Yeah.
He overachieves. Yeah. Gets away with cheating.
Yeah.
Grant Dawson.
Derek Minner. Yeah. The one exception is David Onama. David Onama stands in contrast to all those guys because he is a blinding athlete and just brings a wickedly diverse offensive skill set, to a gym otherwise full of kind of Midwestern grinders.
Yeah.
Onama is a delight to watch. I the same as you, I see very high potential in him. I think he'll probably be on the cusp of the top 10 a year from now, as long as he stays healthy enough to fight 2 or 3 more times. It'll be interesting to see what happens when he takes on some of the juggernauts in that featherweight top 10, but he's going to take a lump or two along the way. He's not a perfect fighter. He can be taken down, and doesn't always have the sense of urgency to get up or do something from there. So I can see where he might lose to someone else even before he gets to the top 10. But this is a fight that is tailor-made for him to look great, because with all the good things that you said about Landwehr, and I agree with all of them, the one thing he's had consistent in his 2 losses in the UFC is he got blitzed early and basically put out cold with a single strike. And if Herbert Burns and Julian Erosa can do that to you, David Onama is not the one to fuck with.
Yeah.
Landwehr is going to come forward because that's what Landwehr does. He's going to throw hard because that's what he does. If he's smart, he'll be looking for an opportunity to bring it to the ground. I don't think he's a dummy at all. I think he knows where his best path to victory lies, but I don't think he's going to get the chance. I think Onama's going to hit him with something sassy first round. Give me David Onama by first round knockout as well. And not TKO. I mean, knockout. This is, something walk off.
So before we move on real quick, I got to kind of echo your words. Shout out to James Krause on a wonderful career. If he does stay retired, I've always thought he's been one of the best coaches. I think his gym is going to blow up even more now that he's full-time coach. I mean, we saw it this past weekend. I know he didn't come up under James Krause, but they do have their first champion, Brandon Moreno. I think we get more of guys like that, guys who already established their names, start coming over to a camp like James. I mean, Megan Anderson did that a little bit, but I think we get even more of those people looking for a home. I think James Krause's team is just going to continue to blow up.
And makes you happy to see it.
Yeah.
Next up on the UFC on ESPN 41 main card is a women's flyweight matchup between Cynthia Calvillo and Nina Nunes. This fight was originally scheduled to take place back on July 9th on that Dos Anjos versus Fiziev card. It was postponed because Nunes fell ill with something unspecified. It's been pushed to this weekend in San Diego, which, I mean, that to me sounds like an upgrade. Now they get to fight in San Diego. I'm going to guess that nothing has happened to change your pick in the last 4 weeks. Would that be accurate to say, Keith?
No, but I mean, Amanda Nunes look really good, so I feel a little more confident in that team now than you know what I mean. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're training on their own, so I do feel a little better about that. But no, I picked Calvillo. I'm sticking with Calvillo.
All right, great. Then sit tight and watch this old grainy footage from 4 weeks ago. Well, so far at UFC on ESPN 39, we have had Valentina Shevchenko's not as good sister. We've had Firas Zahabi's not as skilled brother. And now we have Amanda Nunes' not as good wife as Nina Nunes.
We found the theme of the card, my man.
I'm so sorry. That's the theme of the card.
You forgot Drakkar Klose's not as talented, like, significant other. Was that an insult? I wasn't trying to insult. I thought that was just true, right? Like that. Cody Casey's the power couple. It's Drakkar Klose is the
Yeah, there you go. Drakkar Klose is not as good. Significant.
Well, wait a minute though. The Brunger's Bobby Cooper though. Do we have the more talented one?
Well, Amanda Bobby Brundage, I think, is retired. She hasn't fought since 2019 at this point. Yeah. So yeah. So, hey, we got one power side of the power couple on this whole card. But Nina Nunes facing off against Cynthia Calvillo in what I'm going to preemptively call a cut list special. Calvillo, the 34-year-old Californian, is 9-4-1 overall. She is 6-4-1 in the UFC, which sounds great until you realize that most of that was at strawweight, and she is in fact 1-3 since moving up to the flyweight division. She won her debut at flyweight in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 10 back in almost exactly 2 years ago. Since then, beating Jessica I, by the way. Since then, she is 0-3, having lost to Kayla Chikagian, Jessica Andrade, and Andrea Lee. The most recent of those, the Lee fight, she got basically busted up into her corner, stopping the fight between rounds. That was at UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Rodriguez last November. She'll be taking on Nunes, the 36-year-old former Nina Ansaroff, 10-7 overall. an even 4-4 in the UFC, but she is on a 2-fight losing streak as well. Those being against Tatiana Suarez, which was a unanimous decision loss all the way back in 2019. You didn't need me to tell you that it was a long time ago because it was Tatiana Suarez. Then more recently, last April, got armbarred by Mackenzie Dern in the closing seconds of the first round back at UFC on ABC, Vettori versus Holland. Calvillo, despite her miserable run of late, moderate favorite. She's minus 155. Nunes plus 135 on the comeback. Keith, I mean, I was mildly surprised that Nina Nunes was still fighting, honestly. Considering how much open speculation there is about Amanda Nunes, you know, how much longer does she have for this sport when she's just going to go do the family thing? And she's one of the top pound for pound fighters in the sport. For Nina, who is the one who actually bore the child and is a marginal UFC level talent, when she just pops up once every 18 months or so, I'm always mildly surprised that she's still in it. And she got absolutely run over by Mackenzie Dern in her last appearance. I'm surprised to see Nina Nunes back. And honestly, I'm surprised to see the odds this close against Cynthia Calvillo. Cynthia Calvillo has not looked good at flyweight, but she's not looked good against good fighters. I mean, she beat Jessica Ai, which in hindsight might have been the worst thing for her because we didn't realize at the time how badly Jessica Ai was declining.
Yeah, in a main event, by the way.
In a main event. So, because Calvillo had been kind of ordained, she's going to be a contender at strawweight one day. As soon as she hit a ceiling there, she moved up to flyweight. She beats a top 10 fighter at the time in Jessica Ai, and everyone's like, great. Cynthia Calvillo, we can get her into the title picture. And instead, she came up short against Jauregui and Andrade, both of whom were, I mean, top 5 fighters at the time, if not top 3. And then her bounce back fight after those back-to-back losses, Andrea Lee, who, again, she's hit a ceiling, but her ceiling is around the 10 to 12 mark. Like, she's not a bad fighter. I think Calvillo, even though I've kind of given up on Calvillo as a contender, I've not given up on Calvillo as someone who could hang around the UFC, and I kind of have Nina Nunes. I've got Calvillo in this one. I expect that Calvillo will be able to handle her on the feet or on the ground. Give me Calvillo by decision, and I wouldn't be surprised if Calvillo actually turns to try to start taking this fight to the ground rather than just slug it out on the feet.
Yeah. The biggest surprise I have is that we forgot about the less popular cousin, Saeed Nurmagomedov. No, actually, isn't he the one who's not related?
He's the one that's not closely related. They tried to call him cousins,
but they're not really. Like, there's no. It's like Nurmagomedov would be like having the name Jackson or Brown in America or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that shows you how much I want to talk about this fight. Calvillo, yeah, like I think you described her well. Like she's just an okay fighter everywhere. Like nothing special about her. She's a boxer that can fight out of both stances. She has decent head movement. She has good volume, but she lacks power. She throws a lot of kicks. She is an okay wrestler. I think her wrestling's a little overrated. She's got good entries, and she has a basic understanding. She's explosive. She can get to the second level on the hips. She can cut the corner and chain wrestle, but sometimes she shoots without any setup. Sometimes she gets stuck underneath there. Sometimes she just shoots and just easily gets blocked without even getting close to the hips. She does have a good grappling game. She has some slick back takes, some good ground and pound. But overall, I'm pretty. I feel like almost like a bust compared to what people thought she was going to be. Nina Nunes is such an inactive fighter. She's fought one time in 3 years. Plus, she looks really bad in her last 2 fights. Again, Nina Nunes took on Mackenzie Dern, sorry, and before that was Tatiana Suarez. So like that's a hell of a oh, you're leaving for a little while to have a baby? Okay, let's get you beat up by Tatiana Suarez. Oh, you came back? Okay, let's give you Mackenzie Dern. Yeah, that's tough. What I don't have that many notes on Nina Nunes because she's been so inactive, but pretty fast hands. She likes to brawl. She lacks power though because it's all like arm punches. She backs straight up on the center line, throws some naked leg kicks, but she does have a lot of kicks. Offensive wrestling is not really there. She can like grind in the clinch, but overall she's not a strong threat to get a takedown, and she's a weak defensive wrestler. But again, I do want to put a little bit past my Claudia Gadelia. She beat, which was a good fighter. I mean, this is like 2018 when she beat Claudia Gadelia, but getting taken down by Tatiana Suarez really means nothing to me. That's everyone gets taken down by her. And then Mackenzie Dern is such a wizard on the ground. I really have no clue who wins. I'm taking Calvillo simply because she has been more active. But like it would not surprise me if Nina Nunes beats her because of how like mediocre Calvillo is. Not the best technical breakdown for me. Like I get this one, just one of those fights that I wasn't that interested in, so I didn't spend as much time as I did on some of the other fights. But give me Calvillo to find a way to get the fight to the ground in at least two out of the 3 rounds. So I'll take Calvillo by decision.
There you go. 2 lukewarm picks for Cynthia Calvillo to win by decision over Nina Nunes. The co-main event of UFC San Diego is a light heavyweight matchup between Devin Clark and Azamat Murzakanov. Clark, the 32-year-old South Dakota native, is 13-6 overall. He's 7-6 in the UFC. He is 6-5 at light heavyweight. He fought at middleweight in his very first UFC fight after joining the UFC as the departing RFA light heavyweight champ. After that one fight, he fought at light heavyweight all the way up until his most recent appearance where he took on William Knight at a heavyweight. It was weird. At any rate, he beat Knight by 3rd round TKO. That put the brakes on a 2-fight losing streak for him against Anthony Smith and Ion Cutelaba. He's going to try to make it 2 wins in a row, this time in his actual weight class against Murzakanov. The 35-year-old Russian is a perfect 11-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of the 2021 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted in March at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev, knocked out Tafon Chukwi with a flying knee early in the 3rd round. Odds here slightly favor Murzakanov. He is minus 175, Clark plus 150. Keith, I'll say right off the bat that this is one where I feel like the line is a little out of whack. I think it might be a little bit of Murzakanov just getting that kind of mystique you get for having the 0. We've talked about that many, many times. There's a huge difference between being 10-0 and 11-1, even if that one fight in question was long enough ago to be irrelevant to who the fighter is now. Just there's something about an undefeated fighter. And then the fact that, Clark has not looked great in his last couple of fights, but his last couple of fights were against Anthony Smith, Ion Cutelaba, and then a weird heavyweight fight against William Knight where, he did win, he knocked him out, but he's beaten much better people than Murzakanov has faced. Like he's 6-5. Clark is 6-5 at light heavyweight. And of his 6 wins at light heavyweight, I think all of them might be better than Tafon Chukwi. Like he's beaten good people. Daquan Townsend, Alonzo Menefield. Like the Alonzo Menefield fight was
I don't know about the Townsend one, but okay. I agree with the other ones.
You're definitely not going to agree with the Mike Rodriguez one then. The Alonzo Menefield one was...
That's a better win. Yeah.
Well, it's a good, and it's an especially good win because it showed some intelligence and durability. It was him running into a guy that he couldn't just physically overpower. Menefield is a tank, and Menefield put it on him for the first round, but Clark outlasted him. Menefield started to get tired. Clark turned to his wrestling and won in a rout. If that thing had been a fight night main event, 5 rounds, he would have finished Menefield because Menefield was just dying by the end of that fight. I think Clark can do a similar thing to Murzakanov here, and maybe even easier because Murzakanov doesn't have the same size and raw horsepower that a guy like Menefield does. Like, he'll certainly be able to tag up Clark on the feet. Clark is hittable. Little bit. I think he's a little bit slow-footed. Just in all of his fights, he seems to get hit quite a bit. Mirzakhanov's going to hit him and hurt him some, but most of Mirzakhanov's knockouts are by an accumulation of damage. The last time he really just clean one shot at someone was when he and Andre Muniz fought way back in, I think it was Ukraine somewhere 5 or 6 years ago. And granted, that win is aged really, really well as Andre Muniz is barreling into the top 10. But Mirzakhanov's usual path to victory is not going to be an easy one against Clark. Clark's going to be bigger. I think he's going to be a better wrestler. He's proven that he can weaponize his gas tank. Give me Clark in the upset here by kind of a similar look to the Menefield fight, where maybe he loses the first round, but comes back and wins the second and third and kind of takes this thing going away.
Yeah. Actually, I like that pick a lot. I get the logic behind it for sure. I mean, I agree. I think the odds should be pretty much a pick 'em fight because Mirzakhanov is such a wild card. I think we've come to the realization that Clark will never be a contender. I mean, he is what he is, but he can be a tough out. Mirzakhanov could be a contender. I mean, yeah, he's up there in age. That's concerning. Again, the 11-0 record, we've beaten that dead horse a million times, that they get a little more pop than they should. But Clark is going to be tough. I mean, he's shown a lot of improvements, if we're being honest, especially in the feet. He's now like a compact striker, decent power, still very raw there. But before he used to be such a one-dimensional, just shoot on your hips and he'd wear himself out and then get knocked out. But he's at least somewhat of a threat there. Now, he's very hittable. We've seen him be rocked so many times in the past, but he's a very physically strong. That's why a guy could go up to heavyweight and beat up a William Knight, who is a much more of a heavyweight. Sure, not tall, but this is a guy that missed weight by 80 pounds or something, whatever it was. It wasn't 13 pounds or something. He missed
18.
18. Jesus.
I know. 217 for 205. That's what it was.
217 for 205. So I think that's a fair, anytime you go to the doctors or somewhere they're not going to weigh you and they just ask you to weight, you get your new license. You should have the William Knight rule. You can go within 12 pounds or 12 and a half pounds. You weigh 200, 188. Close enough.
Yeah, sure.
That's just be the rule. If you're within 12 pounds, you're not lying.
I like that one.
So the William Knight rule. But yeah, Clark, he gets to the plum clinch. He's strong in there, knees in the clinch. As you mentioned, that's where he beat up Alonzo Menefield, just wore him out. He's a good wrestler. He's a drive through your hips, very reactionary. He'll get you to if they disengage for a minute and you start opening up big haymakers, he'll drop underneath. Or if you kind of chase him, he'll kind of back up and then kind of spring into a shot, drive through the hips, good at turning the corner, good at chaining takedowns together, solid top control. He has been submitted in the past. That's a little worrisome. And yeah, I'm starting to believe in the gas tank a little bit. Before, his gas tank was such an issue. I think he's kind of controlled that a little bit. I think he's learned how to improve his gas tank or just kind of control it in the moments, not waste some energy. So yeah, I feel much better about Clark than I did years ago. Now, Mirzakhanov, again, a newcomer in the UFC, southpaw, lots of movement, but he has low output, very trigger shy at times, single shots, almost dull you to sleep. And then he has that, I'm going to burst, I'm going to attack, I'm going to throw big power, big hands. 7 out of his 11 wins are by first round knockout. He has another third round knockout in his last fight. So he's got 8 knockouts out of 11 wins. You got to like that. So he obviously has the power. I get what you're saying. I think he's got more power than you're saying. But yeah, he's not the physical freak of Alonzo Menefield. I think he's more technical than Alonzo Menefield. That's why he gets the knockouts. And obviously, he's also fought in the regional scene. Most of those, all but one of those knockouts are regional. Oh, no, the Contender Series too. So
Yeah.
But anyway, so what is that? 6 knockouts on the regional scene. So obviously that goes a long way too. But when he does exchange, he's swinging for the fences. He's loading up everything. He's throwing big haymakers. He can look for that big left a little too much. He will wrestle, but he's not a submission thrower. He has 1 submission on his record. I thought he was starting to gas out against Nchukwu too, but then he got that 3rd round TKO. So it might be one of those just more body language than gassing out. I'm with you, man. I think this should be a pick'em fight. This is a tough fight to call. Meerschaert is moving up in competition. I'm still worried that he will gas out if Clark wrestles him. And I think this has a lot of that Bruno Silva, Gerald Meerschaert feel. Like there's going to be a moment in the fight where you're going to say, okay, Devin Clark has this now. It's whether he gets there. I went with the Bruno Silva getting the knockout, catching it. I'm kind of keeping that theme. So I'm going to go with the undefeated fighter. I'm going to say that Clark does, because Clark has so many moments where he has had like just dumb decisions, mental lapse. I think he makes that mistake. Maybe trusts his striking a little too much. Maybe Meerschaert catches them with a combination, something hurts them, that puts him out. I'll say Meerschaert wins by 1st round TKO, but I have 0 confidence in this pick.
There you go. Just a little bit more dissension on the UFC San Diego preview here, and both of us very tentative with this one. With that, we arrive at the main event of UFC on ESPN 41. It is a bantamweight matchup between Marlon Chito Vera and Dominic the Dominator Cruz. Vera, the 29-year-old Ecuadorian by way of Southern California, is 19-7-1 overall. He is 13-6-1 in the UFC. He is on a 3-fight win streak, those coming against Davy Grant, Frankie Edgar, and Rob Font. The most recent of those, the Font win, was in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 35 back in April. He'll be taking on Cruz. The 36-year-old San Diego, California native is 24-3 overall. He is 7-2 in the UFC. He is 14-3 if you count his WEC WEC tenure as well.
That's crazy though. Only 9 fights in the UFC.
It is.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. He's 7-2 in the UFC, and that's a guy who joined in like 2013. So 9 fights in 9 years, basically. Yeah. He is 14-3 if you include his WEC tenure, which you absolutely should, since his division was absorbed wholesale when the WEC was incorporated into the UFC. He, of course, was the last WEC bantamweight champ. He was the first UFC bantamweight champ. He is the answer to a lovely trivia question, as he was the winner of the only UFC title fight ever contested outside the UFC. Several other champs were brought into the UFC and immediately made champs, like Jose Aldo, the WEC featherweight champ, Ronda Rousey, the Strikeforce women's bantamweight champ. But WEC 53 happened after they knew the merger was taking place, so they were able to expressly say Dominic Cruz versus Scott Jorgensen is a UFC title fight. So there you go. A little bit of trivia. Vera is a moderate favorite. He's -190. Cruz +160. Keith, I'm definitely tossing this to you first. This is either a passing of the torch moment. It's a y'all must have forgot moment. We'll find out which. It is incredible. I mean, obviously it's incredible that Dominic Cruz has only fought 9 times in almost 10 years. But it's incredible when you think about how long his career has been, all the people he's fought, all the things he's accomplished, that he has only lost 3 fights ever. He has only lost 3 fights ever, period, in his entire career.
Let me ask you this. He got smoked in one of those by Cody Garbrandt. If they fought right now, would you pick Cody Garbrandt to still beat him?
Nope.
No, neither would I. But yeah. And then he avenged the other one against Uriah Faber. So he really, I mean, obviously he has 2 to avenge. And at the end of his career, he might get another chance at Cody Garbrandt. I can see that. Like, I was looking at this because I was just amazed by the 9-fight thing. Like I wasn't ready for that. I would have guessed it was double that. And then obviously it's really foolish of me not to realize like we lost this guy for huge sections of time. So of course he hasn't fought that much. But I was looking at Marlon Vera and I was like, when he lost to Douglas.
No, wait, I'm sorry. Give me just a sec here. Cruz joined the UFC in July of 2011. He's been in the UFC for a little over 11 years and he has 9 fights.
Oh, it's even worse. Oh my Lord.
Right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's really is that what ifs. And the crazy thing, like we do what ifs in other sports, and very few guys still are considered all-time greats. Like what would if Dominic Cruz never had these huge moments of inconsistency and these major injuries, we might be talking about a top 5 fighter ever. We might be talking about top 3 fighter ever. If he, or I mean, it could go both ways. You could say, well, maybe if he was more inactive, he'd have even more injuries, or he'd have more beat up, and he would have losses and have bad losses. Yeah, I get that argument. So, but I was looking at Marlon Vera fighting 4 years ago, losing to Douglas Silva de Andrade. If you told me that 4 years ago, when Marlon Vera lost to Douglas Silva de Andrade, that he would be favored over Dominic Cruz in a fight ever. And rightfully so, the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
What, like, are you crazy? Like, Marlon Vera a favorite over Dominic Cruz? And it's funny. I was looking at Dominic Cruz's record while you were, because that night I had to count to make sure that was a true fact. Since Dominic Cruz has, when he lost his title to Cody Garbrandt, he has fought 3 times since that moment. In that same time period, since Dominic Cruz lost his title, he's fought 3 times. Marlon Vera has fought 15 times. Like, what the hell? I mean, obviously it shows kind of 2 extremes. One guy is so inactive. The other guy has been nothing but active.
And but it's not even that he just fights 3 times a year. Like it's not like he's Donald Cerrone. That's just a normal, healthy fighter against Dominic Cruz. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just one of these guys. He never gets hurt. He stays on that path and he fights 3-4 times a year. And yeah. I'll say this with Dominic Cruz. Like we were ready to like write this guy off. The Henry Cejudo loss looked terrible. Like he looked terrible in that fight. Looked worse when he was complaining about a stoppage when he was getting destroyed. But he's looked good in his last 2 fights. The Casey Kenny one, he won a split decision, but I thought it was a pretty obvious win for him. Mm-hmm. But I thought he looked really good against Pedro Munoz. He's still elusive, still uses like a lot of feints, still gets you guessing. The most famous footwork in the game, nonstop moving, constant cutting angles, lands at weird angles, likes playing the matador where the bull's chasing him. He's one of the few guys that can strike while being rushed while he's backing up. Has so much variety in strikes, kind of guessing, never attacks with the same, doesn't come in, throws this like lead left, next attack, same thing. He doesn't do that, always keeps you guessing. What I liked in the last fight is he was darting in and out and then throwing combinations. We saw a lot more combinations when he was landing against Pedro Munoz. Had really good output. I thought he looked, and I used to say that he looked like he lost his step, especially against Henry Cejudo. I thought he looked faster than we've seen him in a really long time in his last fight. He's always been a guy that kind of can win by making you miss. Like his defense is somehow like tricks judges into thinking he's winning. And he also is good at like forcing you to miss shots and tire yourself out. That's how he beat Casey Kenny. I almost said Casey O'Neill. But he also did it against Tito Dillashaw. Like he was good at making Tito Dillashaw miss, and then made him seem like he's winning. He does keep his hands obviously crazy low, relies so much on head movement, and as he's aged, he's 37 now. Obviously, he's had those major injuries. He has long periods of time. If he just suddenly looks terrible, like that's expected when you have these long periods of time. And at that age where you rely so much on movement and head movement, it's dangerous. But in the time being, he's always going to be a tough out for anybody because he's You can't train for a Dominic Cruz because nobody's like him. Even like I know that people say, "Oh, TJ Dillashaw did that with the team alpha male guys," but even his style was still different than Dominic Cruz. He's a really, really good wrestler, very good reactionary double. He loves that knee tap that he does. I think his takedown defense is a little overrated. I've said this every single time. He's been taken down by Dillashaw, by Garbrandt, by obviously Henry Cejudo. I go way back to UFC 199. He was slammed by Uriah Faber. So I think his takedown defense is a little overrated, but his overall game at this point, like I was ready to bury this guy. I think he's still pretty good. Marlon Vera, I mean, you joked about yourself being the heavyweight most improved fighter. I mean, Marlon Vera might be that in MMA right now. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was kind of viewed as like a mid-card journeyman, losing to a guy like Davey Grant in 2016, to be now headlining UFCs and 1 or 2 wins away from a title shot,
knocking out Frankie Edgar and schooling Rob Font. And like, absolutely schooling Rob Font in back-to-back fights.
Absolutely. In a fight that a lot of people thought was a bad stylistic matchup. Mm-hmm. He's a southpaw that's long and lengthy. We used to call him a slow starter, but that was not the case against Rob Font. He turned it up right away. He's still a builder though. Like he gets stronger as the fight goes on, constantly pressing the action, constantly moving forward, constantly cutting off the cage. Rob Font could not get comfortable because Marlon Vera was in his face, interrupting his rhythm, interrupting all his combinations, never let him get comfortable. He really seems to be coming in his power. And you see that like he has a different look physically too. Like you see like more muscle and just looks, and he's fighting with a confidence. And that's something I always say, when you start seeing that confidence come in, something changes in a fighter. Tons of kicks. It's still very hittable. Like you can hit him. He drops his hands, but he's so durable. He's going to stay in your face. Nice knees inside the clinch. He can get takedowns, but he's definitely not an offensive wrestler. He's more of like a kind of catch the kick, kind of win the round kind of wrestler. He's not a good defensive wrestler. That's his Achilles heel. He can get taken down, but he's a good grappler. Like he can throw up some submissions. He has a BJJ black belt, 10th planet BJJ black belt. If he gets on top, he has a mean streak up for a guy who's like, he's almost goofy in interviews and like almost has a little bit of Brandon Moreno in him. That used to be the case. Now he's got a mean streak in him where he's, wants to rip people's heads off. Like I think as he's got close to the top, he really starting to see his potential and he takes it personal, which I love that this Marlon Vera is the one we see now. He has a submission threat. He's got 8 career subs, can get subs off his back. I'm going to say this, man. I was excited about this fight. I'm really excited about this fight now. I think it's a really dope fight. I talked myself into this. I said before we started taping, I told you that I was picking a fighter since this fight was announced. And today, like minutes before we started taping, I switched to the other fighter. The high output, the speed, the power, all of that is in Vera's advantage. Like he's compared to Cruz, he's way ahead of that. But Cruz is such a smart fighter. He is a true student of the game. And I can't what's the word I can't imagine him not noticing that Vera has been taken down in 3 straight fights. He was taken down by Rob Font, who's definitely not, I mean, he's a little bit underrated grappler, but definitely not a wrestler. I can't believe I'm taking this, but I'm going to go with the old guy. I'm going to say Cruz does the same. I expect we have a battle. I think Vera's going to have moments. I think we're going to see Cruz get hurt, maybe dropped. But I think Cruz is going to hit at least 3 takedowns in this fight, and he's going to win himself rounds, being on top, working on top. I'm going to say Cruz wins due to his wrestling. I think we might actually look like a little bit to the Dillashaw fight with both having moments, but the really what's the word like perfectly timed, not just timed like to get it in, but like in moments in rounds to win him a very close rounds. Give me Cruz, and I'll say he wins by split decision.
Wow. Keith had not picked a betting underdog this entire card, and he just
no punk bitch.
He pulls out the big guns right at the end. And you know what? I kind of, even before you said it, I kind of suspected you might be leaning that way. And if he does exactly that, if he does kind of the same thing he did to Casey Kenny, I won't be surprised at all, because you pointed out what an intelligent fighter he is. I was going to ask you, like, is he the smartest fighter that we've ever seen?
Man, Adesanya's striking is something that I've always amazed by. Adesanya's striking intelligence. Randy Couture was a guy who was really good at taking his limited ability and finding strategies, but he's in the club. Dominic Cruz is in the club.
And of course, Couture was almost the first guy who that was the talking point.
Yeah.
He'll come up with a game plan in camp. And yeah, he was just one of the first guys to really do.
Remember when it was a big deal when Randy Couture would pick the pay-per-view main event, and it was like, oh, Randy Couture, take this guy. He's going to win now because Randy sees something the rest of us idiots don't see. Remember that? That was like a thing for a big time.
Cruz, it's hard to overstate.
Yeah, sorry,
and
can I
you
say
kind
this about Cruz? I should
please.
Besides being smart, he has an unbelievable self confidence that just a certain Kobe Bryant's, Tom Brady's, those guys have, where all the odds are against them, they still have this unbelievable self-confidence. And I think Cruz has that confidence of the elite champions.
I completely agree. I always assumed, just based on his demeanor, like the way he talks and that kind of level of confidence, I assumed that he kind of grew up some like rich, spoiled kid. And it is the absolute opposite. He's like his mom was like a single mom and he grew up in a trailer park, just like dirt poor and like bullied.
Yeah.
He developed his fight style because he was fighting 150, 160 pound people and he knew they would just crush him if they hit him, which is why he developed that like just kind of unique style of movement. He's a unique figure in the sport.
You're turning me. I'm already a huge Dominic Cruz fan. You're like turning me into like he's becoming my favorite fighter as you're talking.
Well, all you need to cure you of that is to let him talk a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
He can be a little rough sometimes.
Oh, I know. You know me. I love his trash talk. I love it. Like when him and TJ Dillashaw was going at it, and he was like, I'm done talking to you. Like, dude, this is the whole show is us to talk to each other. What do you mean, idiot? I love him. I love Dominic Cruz. When he's telling DC he doesn't study for the shows.
Oh,
yeah. You know what? He's my favorite fighter. I mean, that's it. He wins it.
He is such a what might have been story. As great as he is.
Yeah.
And I mean, he still might be the greatest bantamweight of all time.
Absolutely.
As great as he is, he's the biggest injury what if in the history of the sport, even over Cain Velasquez. Because Cain Velasquez, even when he was healthy, lost some fights.
The only other side, I know I keep interrupting you, but the only other what if I could think of is maybe the Brock Lesnar if he didn't go to WWE.
Sure.
If he went straight from NCAA wrestling to, NCAA champion to that, and then he was in that weaker heavyweight time, that would have been your Tim Sylvia's, your Andre Arlovski's, your Justin Eilers. That's like the only other one that I could think of that maybe in that category with Cruz.
And that's even
a different one.
Kind of speculative based on less information.
Yeah, and you can do that all day. Well, what if Kurt Angle didn't go to wrestling after the Olympics? And
like, I mean, between his loss to Faber in the WEC and when he lost to Garbrandt, there's a space of 8 years, like 15 fights, where not only could nobody beat him, practically nobody could lay a finger on him. Right. And we're talking about some of the greatest fighters of all time, like Demetrius Johnson, Uriah Faber, Brian Bowles, Joseph Benavidez twice. He was fighting the best in the world for like 8 straight years. And before the Garbrandt loss, Dillashaw was the only person that even gave him a close fight.
Yeah, it's funny. I was there in attendance. It was in Boston, and even you could argue Dillashaw won. It was extremely close. Mm-hmm. It's one of those ones you watch it 10 times, you can score to it. I still remember sitting there, and I turned to my friend Dave, Chicken Parm Dave. Shout out Chicken Parm Dave. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting there, and we both were kind of having this conversation, and I was saying to him, like, dude, even if he loses right now, to be out as long as he is, to have that kind of fight against TJ Dillashaw, it's really one of the most amazing moments to me in MMA history, and unsung moments.
Yeah, yeah, he was taking on TJ Dillashaw off of a nearly 2-year layoff.
And Dillashaw
who does
was
that?
wrecking. Dillashaw basically ended Renan Barão's career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made the joke on our last preview about merging into 80-mile-an-hour traffic on a bike. That's what Cruz did.
Yeah.
Only he made it. He got sideswiped a little bit. He's
straight like Michael J. Fox that shit and Back to the Future, just holding on. And
but the layoffs, there have been so many and so long. Like every time he fights, I'm surprised again that he has a full back tattoo, because I'm so used to seeing him in a suit. I have to remember every time because it's so we get to see him work so seldom. I'm going with Vera here. I'm going with the passing of the torch moment, and I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Like, Cruz took a one-sided shellacking from Garbrandt. Garbrandt showed a path to victory that nobody else has been able to duplicate. Garbrandt just showed that if your hand speed is that much better than Cruz's, you can blow through all this smoke and mirrors and you can hit him in the face. Like, he's hittable if you're Cody Garbrandt in your absolute zone.
And Garbrandt picked up his timing, which nobody else has ever been able to kind of figure out that timing.
Yeah. Vera, he's bigger than Cruz. Cruz 10 years ago was a big bantamweight. He no longer is. Vera's big.
Huge.
And you pointed out that Vera's got more muscle on him now than he did before. It's almost like Michael Jordan in like 85 versus Michael Jordan in like 92. Because Jordan in 85, he was like this, like just rail thin, skinny guy that could jump out of the gym. And he was amazing, but it was like, you can almost never stop me. Then he put on 15 or 20 pounds of muscle. And around like the dream team time, around 92, it was like, no, you can never stop me.
So he just. Sorry to interrupt you again, but I just want to point this out. Make sure everybody pick up these points that Ben is trying to say, because I know not everyone speaks Ben sometimes. Yeah, you're a writer. You be a little wordy, so I'll break it down for the people. You said DeMar Blackshear is the biggest prospect since the John Jones, and sorry to Travis Lutter, but Marlon Vera is now the Michael Jordan of MMA.
Yes.
That's just so those people who didn't get that at home. That's what Ben was saying.
Yes. Damon Blackshear is the Marlon Vera. Yeah. Well, Damon Blackshear is the Marlon Vera of MMA, and Marlon Vera is the Michael Jordan of baseball. And I think Cruz probably will try to take down Vera. Like some number of minutes ago, I asked you if you thought Cruz was the smartest fighter in the history of the sport. He's certainly smart enough to know that Vera can be taken down, and that even if he can't keep Vera down, which I don't think he will be able to, just taking him down still wins rounds in judges' scorecards, or at the very least kind of keeps him off the gunnery range, because he isn't quite as unhittable as he was in his prime. And Vera hits so hard that this fight can turn on a dime if he tags him cleanly. But I suspect that Cruz is going to take Vera down. He's going to be surprised at how strong Vera is and how aggressive he is off his back. I think Vera is going to be able to kind of create scrambles and situations where he can escape. I think Vera is going to be aggressive enough in coming at Cruz. He's probably going to be like hitting around 20 or 25% on his significant strikes, where he's used to hitting around 40, but he's still going to land enough and do enough damage that he's winning rounds against Cruz. I think I wouldn't have always said this, but I think this being a 5-round fight actually plays a little bit in Vera's favor.
I agree on that. I really do.
Where that wouldn't necessarily have been the case at other points in both of these guys' careers. But Vera has managed to put on muscle without seeming to compromise his gas tank very much. And if Cruz has to employ a wrestling heavy approach, that's going to tax his gas tank. So give me Vera in a fun fight, a back and forth fight, but one where, it's 48-47 or more likely 49-46. But we get a little bit of dissension there. Maybe there are some judges giving Cruz 2 rounds, some only giving him 1. But Marlon Vera, in a pretty clear but competitive decision, he moves onward and upward, and Cruz has his first loss to someone who's not like basically a champ.
Yeah.
Like all of Cruz's other losses have been in title fights.
Yeah. One thing we didn't mention, and it's probably because I don't think it really has as much influence, is we didn't really mention that this isn't Dominic Cruz. I mean, I didn't mention it earlier, but when we actually broke down the fighters, that this is in Dominic Cruz's hometown, in San Diego and everything. Obviously, the crowd will be on his side.
We think. Do they like him?
Yeah, maybe not. I'm assuming they'll be on his side. You know what? San Diego's pretty south. There might be some fans from Vera coming up, from Ecuador and stuff. I don't know how far that is, but Ecuador
is pretty far. I lived in Ecuador for a couple of years. It's all the way down to South America.
Okay,
but,
so
I mean,
so what the hell
he
do
speaks
I know?
Spanish. Yeah.
What the hell do I know? I don't know. I live in Rhode Island. I don't know anything about geography. My state is this big, so, you know. So, but I'll say this: the crowd, I think, could win over the judges. Where like a takedown for Cruz, they go crazy. They oversell that moment. But I'll say this, and I think obviously you picked Vera. I don't think the moment will get to Vera, where you're going in enemy territory, they're booing you. We've seen that happen before, where one guy kind of gets raised from the crowd and the other one kind of gets demoralized. I don't think Vera is one of those guys. I don't think it's going to bound it. I actually think he might like relish it. I think he's like liking this like villain Marlon Vera thing.
I'm kind of with you there. And completely unrelated, but since you've gone on so many asides this show, talking about like do even people in San Diego like Cruz? It reminds me of maybe my favorite MMA one-liner ever, when George St. Pierre and Matt Serra were going to have their rematch, and they had the rematch in Canada. You remember, right?
Okay.
And and they asked Serra, like, how's it going to feel like defending against St. Pierre in a town that's just going to be screaming for him and just booing the hell out of you? And he's like, oh, that's okay. I'll know how Tim Sylvia feels everywhere.
False Tim Sylvia.
It's terrible. Like, Tim Sylvia is awesome, but it's so true. I mean, he was such a like unrespected.
I remember Tim Sylvia like he was yesterday being at the Mohegan Sun Arena. He was the heavyweight. He wasn't fighting. He was sitting there taking pictures with fans and doing for like ever. And I remember sitting there saying, oh, that guy gets booed, and he was like everybody hates Tim Sylvia, and he's still taking pictures with everybody. Like, he's a good dude.
He totally.
I actually remember the first time I saw Tim Sylvia. I think I told you the story. He's walking with who must have been fighting on the card. He's walking through the arena. He's not. I don't know who he is. I just see this big ass guy with it must have been Pat Miletich or one of these guys, or Jeremy Horn or something. And I go, I don't know who that guy is, but he's a fighter, and he was wearing a full contact fighter shirt or one of those. It might not have been full. It was one of those at that time. Might have.
One of the mid 90s, like the late 90s brands. Yeah.
And I was like, yep, that guy's a fighter. And then like 6 months later, he was fighting in the UFC.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's my completely unrelated aside. We
squeezed in Tim Sylvia. We squeezed in Phil Baroni. Who else did we squeeze in?
Oh, man.
Rudy.
Yeah, Rudy. All kinds of Rudy Rudiger. This has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 41, Vera versus Cruz. I have been your host, Ben Duffy. He's been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time listening to one of our previews, first of all, thank you. Thanks for joining us. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. We do these for all of the UFC cards and occasionally dip into major offerings from other promotions. Please be sure to like, subscribe, make a comment. The comment sections are getting really, really active on these, but Keith and I make it a point to reply to everybody. We'd love to hear your takes, including if you think we're off our rocker. As long as you're reasonably respectful, we want to hear it.
Which would be correct.
Yeah. But most importantly, join us for the recap. About 15 minutes after this main event is over, Keith and I will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page, breaking down all these fights in reverse order of how we did it just now. We'll start from the main event and work our way all the way down to the prelims, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. What is next for some of the winners as well as the losers? And the live chat is wide open during those recaps. So we are taking your questions, your comments in real time. There's an active and growing community there, and we'd love to have you. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy the fights.